Good morning. I'm going to call the session of the Board of Revision to order. Our panel is composed of Brent McIntyre, who's farthest to my left, Marla Billinghurst, who's right next to me to my left. My name is Harvey Diamond. The city assessor is represented by Svetlana Shabo, and our assistant is Belhan Rojo. I'm going to like to make the following statement. We are in Treaty 1 territory and it's the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. We'll be making applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision have been requested are described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make during this hearing must be sworn testimony, and when speaking to them, such matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparative assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council and is independent of the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear at the hearings, and we issue written orders that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that our decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the municipal board of the province of Manitoba if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. Should a party wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions, after which the applicant may provide their evidence, and questions will follow their evidence as well. Each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence on an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket, and the session will close after all applications have been heard. We will deliberate in private and make our decisions. You will receive the order by written mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be forming part of our public record. We can swear in the parties.
Do you swear in or do you affirm? Please state your full name,
Svetlana Shabo.
and you swear the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I know.
Thank you. Please state your full name,
Sid Story.
and you swear the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So the first matter on the docket will be 1100 Templeton Avenue, and we'll first deal with 2018. And 2019, they be done together, the same assessment
Yes, so the same,
category.
and I have a little housekeeping we have to do at the outset, but I think that we can do them together, can we?
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's the same as, yeah, it's absolutely, so we'll do them together.
And what happened is because of the way the process worked, we were asked to bring we had done them on one docket, on one brief before,
Yes.
and the board asked us to break, so we have copies of.
Okay, I was wondering why there were two
54.
briefs
We've only
here.
got one,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And actually, Mr. Diamond, if we could, it won't really matter. We have a swap out on the page, and I'm wondering if we can do, if they're the same, if we can do 14 first, because the page size in that.
So you want to do,
Yeah, they're exactly the same, 54 first. There's 53 and 54, it's all the same information.
Okay.
One is 18, it's a sub for
Right.
18, and
And
the
you-
other is a sub for 19.
okay, so you want to do the 19 sub first?
If
Is it?
possible. It's just a swap out into 54, because that's what.
Any objection from the assessor?
Can you do it all together?
Yeah, that's fine, either way. Okay, well, here it is here with the swap out.
Thank you. So you want us to use these for any sub?
Yes, you'll see when you open it, there's a
That's
page
fine.
in there.
Okay.
And what happened is, we had actually responded, this mail was coming strangely from the board on these subs, and we received information on the 2/20/21, and we responded to that in error. So you'll see as we get into it.
Okay, that's fine.
We just swap it out.
That's fine, we'll
I
get it.
don't have copies, so I'll need one for the file.
Okay, I'll try not to mark that up.
Okay, thanks.
Do you need extra copies of that?
I just need one.
Which one, 53 or 4?
When you
I
see
have two
this.
copies similar.
I got lots, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Sheila, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Mhm. First, Board of Revision file, we go in for 19-54, and another file, 19-53. It's for 1100 Templeton Avenue, roll number 0500914330. Property belong to Ray Joint Cell Leasing Limited. We are evaluating the properties as a stance of January 1st, 2018, based on economic condition as April 1st, 2016. This appeal is with respect to the amount of assessed value only, based on evidence in this report. In this assessor opinion, that the market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2016 is $8,724,000. That as the 2018 and 19 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject property is collision center and located at northwest portion of the city of Winnipeg. On the page 2, you can see air photo, and also I post more photos on page 8, 9. The subject site is rectangular in shape in area of 430,559 square feet. Leasable area of the building 48,944 square feet. On page number 2, the assessor made the following request for income expenses information under section 16.1 of the Municipal Assessment Act. It is brand new property, so we don't request and didn't receive any information, income expense information yet. This report provides retrospective valuation. The Municipal Assessment Act defines the date of valuation as reference date. The reference date April 1st, 2016. The valuation reflects the physical condition of the property as of the assessment date, which January 1st, 2016. We have a subject sale history. Sale in 2017, August 1st for $4,500,000. Subject property, we don't have any information about lease. Subject property, currently property occupied by 3 different businesses. On page 3, you can see my vehicle, service-related rent comparables, and map below that showed all my comparables and subject property and red dot. I presented 6 comparables on Daly Street, Portridge, in Inksburg, Brook, Portridge, Empress, Echeverria Boulevard. All this property, suburban area, land area. By the way, first line, it's my subject property. It's and net $13 68 cents per square foot, it's our assessed rent. All my comparables land area between 10,000 to 150,000. Lease start date between 2013 2016. And leasable area between 5,000 to 39,000 square feet. You can show that my mean came across $17.26 per square foot, in median $15.28 per square foot. On page 4, you can see 4 premises for this property, because it's 3 different businesses inside. In overall rent per square foot came across $13.68.
May I just say something? Are your pages numbered?
Yes,
Are they just numbered?
they're numbered, yes.
Bottom right-hand corner.
Okay, page 3 is the map and the
Comparables, yes.
comparable,
Mhm.
and then page 4 is the wood, or page.
That's where we are right
page
now.
4, Page 5.
No, I think you're missing
Yeah.
this
Back.
page, the back
The
of
back
it.
of the page.
It's
you-
not
oh, you're
there.
There's
missing.
no back on these, this is what we got, but it's
Oh.
okay.
Oh, you're missing a
We'll
page.
figure it out, we can follow, it's okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you mine for now, and I'll flip on with Ms. Billinghurst, so you can have it,
Yeah.
and give it back to me
Is
after
that,
if you
is
would.
that possible, it came from the board that way, city that way?
Okay.
I don't
Okay, I'll
know.
take this one.
I didn't do.
You can share with me.
That's it for, okay?
Because they're stapled differently too.
Okay, sorry.
Because usually I send print with staplers, sorry I didn't check.
You do it?
I usually send print with staplers, so it's package.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
I didn't-
Sorry, we'll continue on,
Sorry about that.
that's fine.
I was missing every second page. so
Okay, well, I'm glad you interrupted, so you could have it there.
Yeah, I apologize,
Yeah.
sorry.
But don't apologize, it's,
Yeah,
you
you-
you did right, you want to follow what's going on. Okay, you can proceed.
For 2018 general assessment, vacancy rate were determined primarily from questionnaire mailer to property owners. Also considered was vacancy information in published records. Additional information filled in connection with revision appeals was also used. For this property, we did apply 4% vacancy loss. How we estimate effective gross income of 642,000. Expenses, we did apply 7% of expenses at shortfall for vacant space, $4.50 per square foot. Our net operating income came across $589,000. We did apply overall capitalization rate 6.75%. Please look on my page 6. We will present capitalization rate estimation. A direct capitalization method is used to convert a property's single years of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rate can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For 2018 general assessment, April 1st, 2016 reference date, capitalization rate were derived from model generated estimates of net operating income in sale price that were time adjusted to April 1st, 2016. The ratio statistic for the assessment taxation department income producing models.
You know, we're aware of what it says on the page, we've heard it before, so you can skip that.
Okay.
You can
Last
be assured that our
paragraph.
board Is
The
very
following
rare.
chart compares the published rate for City of Winnipeg capitalization rate for the property type that are reported. The 20th and 80% list are also shown for the City of Winnipeg data, indicating narrowed range of capitalization rates used for 60% of parcel with this specific property type. In my case, you can see that office, suburban B area, City of Winnipeg, at 20th and 18th percentile, between
sorry, I can't,
5.5
I can't understand what
to
you say.
7.75. So it's inside this range.
Right.
It's also supported by Colliers, CBRA, E, and Stevenson. By applying capitalization rate, our estimate net operating income, we came across 8,724,000. Based on my evidence and analysis, the April 1st, 2016 market value of the property is 8,724,000.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, do you have any questions of the
Yes,
assessor?
just a couple. I might have missed some of the explanation, so let's go back to that cap rate just for a quick moment. How do you classify this property? Where do you find in your cap rate studies?
It's a office building property.
It's which
It-
kind?
Office suburban B.
Office.
Office Suburban B.
Oh, office? Okay. It's an auto body shop, correct?
Yeah, but it's zoning commercial. Commercial zoning.
Okay, all right. So there really isn't is that, in your opinion, that's the most appropriate classification for an auto body shop as a suburban office?
We don't have specific line for body shop,
Okay.
but it's inside office, suburban area.
Okay, so looking at suburban office, did you say it was a D or a B?
B,
B, okay. And the high part of that, the highest that they show, this is a stretch, I think, the city of Winnipeg goes as high as 8.5%, correct?
we're looking for another columns where 20th and 80th
Yes,
percentile.
Okay.
It's between 5.5
And
and
then going,
6.75%.
okay, and then going across to CBRE, they're suggesting a 7.5% cap rate for a suburban office. And I doubt that that would include auto body shops.
We apply 6.75%.
Yeah.
It's inside
Okay,
this
thank you.
range.
Okay, I won't belabor the point. I'll come back to it. If we can just go back to page 3 of your brief. You've given 6 comps and the subject is on the first line, correct?
Yes, it's correct.
Okay. And did you have occasion to visit these comps?
No.
Okay. Do you know anything about them? What can you tell us about 370 Daily? Who's a tenant?
1 second. Emax Auto.
Who?
On my page 17, you can see aero photo and photo of this subject comparables.
Okay.
Building
And
B.
what did you say the tenant's name was?
X Max. Body shop.
X-Max,
Yeah, it's body shop.
B-Max.
Building built in 1981, but we talk about brand new property 2018.
And you've used that lease, and that's only a 1-year lease?
Yes, what I
Yeah,
have.
that's atypical, is it not? That there'd be a 1-year lease? Would you not pay a premium for a 1-year lease in your experience?
I just reported what reported to us. what I use information.
And 370 Daily, you didn't attend it, so you don't know what the degree of finish was, how it was finished off?
It's typical body shop.
It's
Service garage,
service garage. Yeah.
yes.
But there is two different, would you agree that there is one, I'm gonna say more distasteful component of that, and that is auto body often are moved off premise because they're not a clean tenant. Would you agree with that?
Could you explain more?
Okay, this, you understand that this is the Gautier Collision Center,
Mhm.
and it is where it is because it's surrounded with car dealership, with his car dealerships. The Gautier Group, like the Birchwood Group, like the Delarty Group, build collision centers separate from the dealerships because they're damaged vehicles. They're become somewhat unsightly. So you know that this is built to service auto pack claims for the Gautier customer. You aware of that? It's a body shop. They
Yes.
fix things.
With 50% office space, brand new building.
And this lease was entered into for 1 year. Was that not with Sturgeon Tire? The Daily, 370 Daily?
No, it's not Sturgeon Tire.
970 Portage, did you have occasion to visit that site?
970.
It's called Maxim
It's,
Muffler, muffler
Mute
service?
mufflers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I acknowledge that this very small vehicle service garage
Yeah,
with small land area,
yeah. But you feel comparable because even though it's
because it's what
10% of the
exists,
size of the subject, it's,
because it's clean lease.
yeah, please?
Its lease was, I used a small service garage to
Okay.
show the service garage and our subject property.
Okay. How about 165 Inksbrook? Did you have occasion to go near there and buy it?
No, but I can describe this property for our records.
You can describe it for your record.
This property through our records.
Okay. Is this property on Brookside, on Route 9, I'm sorry, on Oak Point Highway, north of Inkster?
265. You can see photos, this property on page 19.
Yeah. No, I know the building very well, but do you know where it is? It's on Oak Point Highway, north of Inkster.
Okay, 165. I have map of all my comparables on page 3.
Yes.
Let's find there. 65, yeah, it's same
It's north of
northwest
Inkster.
part of the city of
Yeah,
Winnipeg.
and have you been by it to see it's all by itself out in the bald prairies? And had occasion to go by? No.
No.
Okay. When you looked at it, didn't you wonder how it's Fountain Tire, do you agree?
Yeah, it's in Fanta Tire. It's building built 2014,
Yeah.
and they have rent for $28.71.
Okay, let's just think about that for just a minute. This is an auto body shop almost in Rosser, at the edge of the city in the north of Inkster, all by itself. How could it possibly pay $28.79 square feet in rent? How's that possible? And when you see that, don't you wonder if what tests do you do to see if you got correct information?
You know, Mr. Story, it's an outlier. I don't think we're gonna give it very much
Okay.
weight anyway.
Okay, well, I think it's important that,
Even if, and I'm saying, even if it is correct, I don't think we give it a lot
Yeah.
of credit because it's
30,
definitely an outlier.
okay, sorry. 3570 Portage, did you do any auto dealerships last year, or last cycle?
Yes.
So you've seen this property before, that was Boyd Glass, where they were, that's out in Westwood, across from Unicity.
Yeah, it's a Boyd Group.
Okay, and if you remember, that property was used by the city as a comp with a $13 rate, but it was semi-gross, and the utilities were paid by the landlord, so it was determined to be $822, and that's the number that carried forward in most of the hearings. Are you aware of that or no?
No, in our reports, it's $13 per square foot for around 10,000 square feet of leasable area.
And you know that
And this
that's,
lease was signed in 2014, 2 years before.
yeah, and you know it's vacant. You know it's vacant now?
What was in 2016,
Pardon me?
it's when it was vacant.
Okay, was it vacant in 2016?
I talk about lease in 2014 for
Okay.
$13 per
Okay.
square foot.
555 Empress Street, is that just a misclassification? That street, that's a complete auto dealership, that's called Capital Ford Lincoln.
Yes, it's correct.
How did it end up in the suburban offices?
Because we talk about a car dealership right now. In our car dealership, everything in Office B. It's belong office portion. It's not industrial.
Okay.
I
It's
think she's saying that they
classified.
classify car dealerships as Office B.
Yes,
In 2016, they were classifying, no, they weren't.
In my
I did
case,
30 car
I
dealerships.
talk about lease for
Okay, so you're aware,
2014.
okay, you're aware that this is Capital Ford Lincoln right beside Polo Park?
Yes,
And the rate is $14 a square foot.
yes.
Okay. And going back to Innsbruck, it's $28 a square foot, and it's out on Oak Point Highway. 1106 Chevrier, that's Car Star, you're familiar with that one? Small building.
Yes,
On Chevrier? Okay. Have you had occasion to go by there, speak to the finish, the degree of finish?
I know that this building was built in 1977,
Yeah.
very old building, and lease in 2013 was for $15.62 per square foot for 4,000 square feet. And you can see this photo on page 22.
And that building has obviously been renovated since it was built in '71, correct?
For sure.
Okay. What did you do for economies of scale? Economies of scale means that you pay less typically if you have bigger space. These are all, with the exception of the car dealership on Empress, they're all a fraction of the size of the subject. The first one is in terms of leasable square feet. The, this area, the 370 daily is 5,000 square feet, just around 10% of the size of the subject, correct?
Yes.
Did you make any adjustment because of that or no?
Okay. We look for adjustment for leasable area. This property has 5,300 square feet of leasable area.
Yeah,
So this is net rent for $70.99 should be adjusted downward.
okay.
But look please on land area, it's only 55,000 square feet. Compared to our subject property, more or less 400,000 square feet. For land area will be adjusted upward. It
So
will
what
be
are you saying,
even
your
by
two
the.
adjustments offset each other?
Yes, it's
Okay.
correct.
That's a new approach. Similarly, 970 Portage on Portage Avenue,
Yes, it
Just
will be
past Arlington.
same approach,
same information.
yes.
Okay.
By the way, in this my rent comparables, my 55 Empress Street the most similar to the subject property because
Is
it
more
has most similar to the subject
Is most
property in
similar to the
case of
subject?
land area.
Mhm.
It's 150,000 square feet, it's biggest
Okay.
land area in my comparables, and biggest square footage of leasable area, around 39,000 square feet. And we're talking about 49,000 square feet of subject property. And they was rent for $14.93
And where did you get that 1493 from your?
from
From your
reported to
mail-
us,
mail-
yes.
mailing? Okay. And you're aware this is right beside Polo Park. It's on Empress at Polo Park, the
Yes.
shopping center.
Yes,
And you know that the one on Templeton is not visible from McPhillips, that it's subject.
but our applied rent much low compared to this comparable number 5. We acknowledge location.
You're 13, you're saying that the $13
Yeah,
offsets
close
the
to 15,
location next to Polo Park?
Yes, it was
Yeah, I
in our,
disagree with you, but we can agree to disagree. Okay. And do you know in any of these, if you go look at these buildings, most of them have hoists, because most of them are not auto body shops, most of these that you've provided, vehicle service buildings, a muffler shop,
Mhm.
2 tire shops. So when the landlord leases that space, is he also leasing the tenant the hoists?
We don't account for any equipment, just for building.
Just for the building, okay. But if that $28 square foot lease included the equipment, that you can just open the door and be in business, you don't account for that?
It's not reported to us.
Well, something is, because
It's
you've got a
reported
$28.79.
net lease.
Excuse me, you've got a $28.79 rent
Yes,
in a property that has never, ever been appealed. So that means that that's probably what the people told the city.
it's assumption, we don't know. No
You
one
don't know how you got the number?
No,
But you're comfortable that's fair market rent?
yes, because it's reported to us.
I would indicate in Mr. Story, we consider an outlier anyway, so.
Well, they're all outliers, Mr. Diamond.
Well, this one for particular news, $20 is a lot higher than many of the others.
Yeah. Those would be all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mattingly, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
On page 3, or page 4, sorry, you've broken down, are there 3 separate tenants in this building?
Yes, 3 separate tenants, that's why we broke in 3 premises.
So, are they all related, or?
Everything about auto.
What was
Do
that?
we need name of this?
Well, I
Businesses.
think Mr. Story mentioned it was the Gautier Group that
It's the
owns.
Gautier Group. There's one tenant, the Gautier Group.
So
There are
it's
3
all-
different-
Of one tenant, Jim Fourier, Coutier, Buick, GMC Ltd. Second tenant's Rayon Sales and Leasing Ltd. And third tenant's Jim Gautier Chevrolet Ltd.
So it's not all a body shop?
It's everything collision body shop, yeah.
Right.
Different type of, 2 collision center for 2 different type of building,
Well, it sounds like there's also a leasing company.
and
that-
leasing company that occupied lowest premise. They occupy,
And I just think, sorry to interrupt.
yeah, around 4,000 square
The
feet.
larger dealerships buy,
Okay, that's fine, we're asking questions.
My question. The sale in August 1st, 2017, was that land only?
Land only.
And if I go to page page 14, there was a permit taken out in 2017 to build the building.
Yes, correct.
And that permit value that you've shown there, or that the city has shown is 7.8 million?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Billinghurst, do you have any questions?
So are these, I don't know if you would know this then, but do we know these tenants are arm's length?
From the landlord?
Yes.
From landlord, I don't know, no.
So
It
we
should
don't
be
know.
separate, yeah.
So we don't know if these rents
And I
would be
hope for
net or
next
gross.
income expense mailer, we will have full information about tenants.
Okay, so I guess this would probably be a better question for Mr. Story when that comes around.
Mhm.
Okay, those are my questions.
But those, the rents that you reported are all reported rents?
It's everything, our model
Well, it's
generated.
model, so.
It's
oh, these-
everything on
Oh, these are
page,
not before the rents, these are
No.
model rents.
no, it's on page 4, it's model rents.
Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so my question
Mhm.
is this building broken down to 3 separate parcels, so that they do it to 3 separate tenants? Or all the tenants of this property, the 3 of them, jointly using the same common area?
Yes,
Okay, so it really is a single-use property, and we have related entities that are co-leasing it.
yes.
Thank you, I don't think I have any other questions. Mr. Story?
Thank you. We'll be brief. I'll refer you to 1954, there's say we have some housekeeping, but I'll get. I think you just, we might have the same. Let's go to page 11. Page 11 of the brief. These are all from the page.
Are you talking about your brief?
Yes, I agree. I'll
Okay.
start with the picture, the collision center. And what it is, it's an auto body shop, and it has a counter for a budget rent-a-car, as do many of the larger dealerships have representatives sitting there looking at car leasing. That's the building, it's attractive. This is the important pictures, page number 13, which is the interior of the building. And I wanted to show you that you can't get much more sparse than this. There's virtually no finish in these buildings. It's an auto body collision center. You got the picture?
Yep.
Zoom back. Okay. You can't, there's no access off of Templeton. You have to go down the private road that takes you between Mr. Gautier's dealership and Walmart to access it. If you go to page 37, as indicated before, Mr. Delary with his auto group, Bertrand Auto Group, the Chipman family, and Mr. Gautier all have off-premise collision centers. This is 3965, this is exactly the same use as the subject. It's the Stevenson or the Chipman Group of companies. It's their collision center. It was heard with a market rent of $10 a square foot and a cap rate of 8.5%. Mr. Smith from Stevenson representing that property. And if you go to page 41, that just gives you the analysis of how the assessment was arrived at. That's the write-up of how it was arrived at. You see the $10 square foot rent, $5 vacancy, 8.5 cap. The next one is 1412 McPhillips. This is a bit of it's an interesting situation. It's right across the street from the main Gautier car dealership on McPhillips, but it has a Hakeem Optical in the front end, and it's called an auto collision center, but it's really was put in for detailing. So they take the cars in and they make them look new again. But it's one, and this is a property that we handle. And that's with a capitalization rate of 7.5%, that's from last cycle. But that includes, as I indicated, a Hakeem Optical. The next one is page 49, and this is 160 Watson. 160 Watson runs parallel to McPhillips. It's west of it, close to the main dealerships, And that was also, had been used over the years as a collision center, and still is. And that, there's a ruling there on that one at 7.7%. And a market rent of $11 a square foot, that's on page 51. And we have maybe you'll be familiar with this, but the dealerships, the way they were assessed in 2016 is they were $11.50 a foot if they were larger in nature and $12 if they were less. And larger was, we treated it as ages of 35,000 square feet would be at the lower rate, and $12 at less than 35,000 square feet. So those rates were kind of established, and cap rates were anywhere from 8 to 8.5%. If you go to the very back page, this is standing in the, standing on the corner of the property, and immediately north of it is an apartment building called the Lady Joyce. And the only reason I put this is it's an atypical, strange bedfellows to have an auto body shop and the apartment block, but it's also owned by Mr. Gauthier. So if you go back to the attachment you have that was added to the docket, because we had again, the mail came out that we got the notice on 2/20/221, before the sub, we got the information on the sub, so we had, in error, so this is a corrected position. The assessor's $8,724,245. We're suggesting 11.5 as a market rent because it's new, and we're suggesting 7.5 because it's new. If it weren't new, it would be 8.5 because it's auto body, and 11.50 would probably be more in the 10 range because it's their buildings have virtually no finish to them, just washroom for the staff primarily. So I would respectfully submit that the assessment for both 218 and 219, the subject property, be reduced from 8.724 to 8,199,000, using 7.5% as a cap rate and 11.50 as a market rent. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of Mrs. Story?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
You have provided no evidence for lease rate of $11.50, have you?
I provide you $10 lease rate. I marked it up to $11.50 because it's new,
What
and
do you
that's the
think?
Birchwood Collision Center. The decision is in the brief. We also have the Watson, we also have 1412 McPhillips. You just have to read the brief. Those are decisions with the rates.
I can see, okay, let's open page 51. 260 Watson Street. Could we spend more time on this table? I can see 2016,
Which page are you on, I'm sorry?
51.
51?
51?
You know, we have 100 pages.
There is no 52.
51, 160 Watson Street, for example.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
it.
I have one for, yes, I have 51. What's the question?
About this table, we can see that 2016 assessment taxation department assessed value of $13.30. What about second part of your table? It's a Board of Revision decision or what?
Page 51?
Yes,
You must know that these are Board of Revision decisions.
yes, but the support document, my point, I don't
The only
see
what I brought-
any
what this is in for is to
support
show you that,
document
what this is in for.
for lease information. It's just Board of Revision decision and our assessed value only.
And you say you don't,
It's
you
not-
don't abide by board decision?
In my opinion, it doesn't support evidence.
Wow, it does reference at the bottom that the cap rate used in this auto body shop was 7.7%. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, that's why it's there.
When
That's
this,
called evidence.
okay, when this building was built,
I don't know.
But not 2018.
No, absolutely not. And that's why we didn't use an 8.5. We took an 8.5 cap rate you suggested for this property. But you've got to remember that one has, that property has two components to it. The frontage was reconfigured for Hakim Optical. So it's an the back end is an auto body shop, but not a metal basher, because Hakim Optical don't want people walking by damaged cars to get to their space. It's their detailing shop where they make the cars pretty to sell.
Okay,
And
let's go to page.
But the best comparison is Birchwood's Collision Center, it's almost identical.
Open please page 23. Where we can see Fairfax Realty Advocates, Industrial Cap Rate Study.
Cap rate study, yes. Yeah, we didn't use this. Because there's no classification. As a matter of fact, I have the good fortune of representing two of the larger property owners in Winnipeg. They won't lease to a car dealer, to a car auto repair shop, to a vehicle repair shop, a collision center. They don't. And it's just the nature of it. So it doesn't fit into any of the typical boxes. And it's quite different when you look at a muffler shop or a quick lube or something of that nature. It has much less risk and is more palatable to an owner than an auto body shop doing collision repair.
The subject property is located in commercial area, isn't it?
In a commercial area?
Yes.
Well, it's in a residential area as well, because everything west of their houses, the first property west of their houses, going east and north is the Lady Joyce, which is an apartment building, and a Walmart, but it's in close proximity to Walmart. They share the road in, and it's bordering on an apartment building on one side, and on the other side it's bordering on houses. So it's on Templeton, and there's no access to the subject building from Templeton. When you get to the gates at Templeton, they refer you around, and they can't even tell what street it is because there's no name to that street, but they refer you to enter the facility through the Walmart parking lot. And at the end, halfway down Templeton, just past this, because of this development, they've put in a roundabout of some sort to cut down the flow of traffic from the commercial. So it's right in the middle of the Garden City area, I guess you'd call that. It's
Next.
fairly residential.
Next question. Cap rate for commercial property tend to be lower than for industrial property,
Tend to
don't
be-
they? Lower,
Our lower commercial
Yes.
properties, than which?
don't they?
Hmm?
Cap rate for commercial property
Yeah.
tend to be lower than for industrial property, don't they?
But commercial, industrial properties are also commercial. You mean in offices have a lower cap rate than industrial? I'm sorry, I don't know your
Yes,
question.
that's my question.
I'm not ducking it, I know the answer, it's not
Yeah.
the question.
It's
Cap, there is no in any of the cap rate studies I've ever seen in my life, and Mr. Ryan will attest to this as well, there's no line for auto body shops. They're generally considered to be retail, function of retail, or industrial. I can't imagine that you would call Innsbruck a suburban office when it must have a dozen bays to change tires. So it's not an office. So there's no. So if your question is who has the highest cap rates, I would think that probably the industrial would have the highest cap rates. And the reason they're high is because rarely in Winnipeg are industrial properties investment quality that people, that pension funds and REITs would invest in. So they're not investment grade is the terminology. I don't know if that, does that answer your question? You said
Yes.
when is the highest? It would probably be industrial.
Isn't true that all of your cap rate comparables are industrial properties?
Well, I can't imagine the Birchwood Collision Center would be an industrial property. It's an auto body shop in an auto mall with others, with some other car dealerships.
So they have a lot less office space, don't they?
They pay a lot.
They
less.
have a lot less office space.
Sorry,
They have a lot less office space.
They don't have any. A collisions, that's why I showed you the picture, that's what you're missing. I showed you the picture, there's no office space, there's one washroom for the staff, there's no customers don't go, it's an auto body shop. So there's no finish, look at my picture in the brief, that's why I put it in, I mentioned it when I gave the presentation. And you can't establish in this type of building, there's no way that you can look at rents and determine what the finish is.
Yeah, but in our case, we have 4,000 square feet leasing area, it's office space.
It's which,
4,000 square feet of
Yeah.
office space.
office space?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
there's
a-
not, well, it's whatever the city decides
It's
it is.
our,
It's a big, you can see it, it's a steel building, I believe it's steel. It's bare bones, there's nothing in it, there's no boardrooms or offices or TVs or reception. At one end, they have a counter and it says budget rent a car.
Okay, please open my brief on page 11. We have a main floor plan for this building, and this area is office space. It's 4,000 square feet.
Where are you looking on page 11?
It's here,
The bottom.
this part, but the entrance, it's office space. It belongs to premise 292216.
So I don't understand what you just said, but
I talk about
acknowledge
office
it- I
space.
acknowledge
Okay,
this-
This building
Maybe I can
has
clarify.
four
Yeah, I can't, so I
4,000
can't
square
understand.
feet
Okay, I can tell you.
office
If you
space.
look at the plan that is on page 11,
Yeah.
it shows the first part,
Yeah.
and it says audit office
Okay,
in that first division,
yeah.
which I think the assessor's saying totals, it's got a waiting area and reception area and offices it shows, and I think the assessor's saying that that occupies 4,000 square feet.
Well, the assessor never attended there, I did.
Well, I'm just telling you that that's what she
Yeah,
says, and there's a
okay.
plan here, and you can ask her where she got the plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, sure.
She's asking you
Not from
questions,
the
she's
city.
asking you questions now, but
yeah,
I think that might be some clarification you might want.
yeah.
Is it true that they are located industrial area? Is it not?
It's included in industrial area?
All your comparables in industrial area.
Yes,
So-
they're auto body shops. You wouldn't
They
put-
are not very good comparables, are they?
Virtual Cleaning Center is not a good comparable?
Because it's industrial properties.
It's in-
You know, I think the use
Okay,
was
the
the
use,
word.
you really think stretching it, but, okay.
Okay. Let's go about bottoms of your table, about state industrial portfolio. I have a few questions.
I'm sorry, I missed you again, I'm not hearing you very well.
On your page,
Yeah,
I want to ask about these cells.
What page is that on?
It's same page 23. On,
page 23
yes,
of our brief. Okay,
you have not provided enough detail about the portfolio of cells, have you?
about which?
You have
Have not
not
provided.
provided
Yeah.
enough details
Detail.
about the portfolio cell, have you?
Portfolio sales?
Yes, about this 15 properties. I want to
That's
find
just
what
our, that's
about.
just our industrial cap rate said, no, very little, because it's a portfolio sale.
Okay,
It was Slate Properties buying from Huntington, as I recall, or Slate selling, I can't remember. We represented them. That's an industrial cap rate study.
you haven't indicated how old they are, have you?
How what?
How old they are?
Sale? The portfolio sale?
Buildings, yes, these 15
It
buildings.
says when they're built here.
Says a year built, it's right there, second column.
Not for the
No,
portfolio.
not, I talk about everything
No, not the
about
They're
portfolio.
all different years. We put them in for information. I don't have the years in this graph.
You haven't indicated how the net operating income calculated, how you.
No,
So we can't rely on these comparables,
I'm not.
can we?
I'm asking for 7.5% cap rate. If we relied on slate, we'd be looking at 8.9%.
You would agree that older property tend to sell with higher cap rates.
All the properties tend to.
Old properties,
Yeah, because they have more risk. They've surpassed their estimated useful life. That's obvious, yes. I agree. And these are older properties.
your comparables are all much older than the subject property, aren't they?
Yes, they are, as are yours. You have one for 1971, as I recall, in your comparison.
So they are not very good comparables, are they?
Well, I think they are, but you may not. Just evidence. The main evidence in this case is that you need equity. If Birchwood has collision centers that are at a particular rate, I think you'll find that they have other properties that are like that. That's the best evidence there is a decision on a similar property. And it's a little higher rate. I use a lower cap rate because this is brand new and the Birchwood is not brand new anymore.
I know.
So we use a higher cap rate.
Thank you. Mr. Matthew, any questions of Mrs.
Yes.
Sir? Go ahead.
I'm a stickler for details. Why does your brief say 2020 realty assessment?
Well, that's why we did the swap again, because what I was saying.
Well, I got the swap and it says 2020.
Yeah, what happened is we got the information. We used the 2021 because it came before the sub came. Our sub came at a different time. So we talked to the board and they said, do them as two and bring them here, so we did. But that's just a mistake.
Now, throughout your brief, can you tell me which page the rent comparables that you may use is on? Because I can't.
I use the, well, I have a rebuttal brief if you want to go through it. I thought we were okay. Can I go through the rebuttal brief quickly? It gives you a little bit of information on the market rents we've chosen.
Maybe you should present it before you go into it.
Yeah.
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 You know, I don't think we're ready for you to, if you want, you could have presented it with your
Well, it's a
evidence.
question
You're
I
still
didn't
giving your evidence, yeah.
Okay. Question is, how did we come up with that?
Well, I guess.
Well, we used the decision primarily tonight. Our main thing is the decision the boards have made in the past, and the way auto dealerships have been treated in the past. And this is the past, because this is a sub for this is using 260.
But I think the chair was quite specific on the introduction that we don't look at other assessments, which a previous roll year is another assessment. And personally, we're not bound by those decisions. We have to look at what's presented before us today.
Okay.
That's why I would have expected that the rent comparisons would have been in the main brief.
Okay.
Just a bit of housekeeping.
Okay.
So are you going to present the rent comparisons?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. I mean, you've got, the assessor has provided some rents. We've looked at them. We don't want to compare. I can tell you that on the, what we did is we analyzed each one of the rents that the assessor used. And the only property that's even remotely close to this one is the one on Empress, which is a whole car dealership. It's clearly misclassified. It has an ARV of $10 a square foot. It's never been appealed since 2012. So we have that plus other evidence, but I think the assessors, I have trouble understanding that the taxpayer would be criticized for that when the assessor brings in comparables that are not really comparable, in my opinion.
No further questions.
This building is in questions of Mrs. Story.
So the owner rate of market rent of $10, is that the actual rent that's being collected there now?
In the subject?
Yes.
Probably not. It's probably higher because what they do is, all these auto dealers, they put in a package whereby if it's buying another, or opening another location, their inventory may be included, their fixturing, their equipment, all their tools, everything. They're all done, their financial leases, you call them. So they, even if they did have a rent, if they, whatever their rent is, it would probably be, not arm's length, because it's Gauthier Group, this is Gauthier property.
Yeah. So you don't know the actual rent that they're collecting?
No.
Okay.
Ordinarily, he would take what he's done in the past, in the McNaught location and others, is takes the entire, all of the costs required, including startup working capital, and puts a rate on it, usually in the 8 to 9% range, and that's their rent, that's what it is, financial lease. But it includes inventory, tools, all the build-outs you need for the building.
Okay. That was my question, thank you.
Okay, well, my question takes us to page 2, which is your calculations, which is, I think, the crux of the whole matter. And I don't know if I really understand it, so I'm gonna have to ask you to help me with it. I think on the left-hand side is the city's calculation, is that correct?
Yes,
And yours on the right-hand
yeah,
side?
this is, that's a swap off, because the left hand, the 10 million that's in there is the 2021.
Okay, so where, I guess, oh, yeah, I got the swap off here.
That's
right?
it, that's it,
Okay.
so this is what we're doing today.
Yeah, so I'm asking you, I gotta understand this, okay?
Yeah.
So you, basically, the city's got a 1368 price per square foot.
Model rent,
Yeah,
yes.
and you've got 1150.
Yes.
So how did your market rent come up higher than theirs? You've got 669,463, yours comes to 706.6.
Good.
Like, I don't understand this whole thing, because you actually get a higher NOI than they do, and the only reason why yours is lower is because of cap
There's
rate.
a mistake there, I'm sorry. There must be
Well,
a.
this is basically the essence of your whole argument
Yes.
before us, and I don't follow what you're doing, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, too, it's 1150 is what we use. Right.
Good math.
Yes, I'm sorry, it should be 562,856.
568.56 is the rent?
Yes, 1150 is what you're suggesting the market rent is. On 48,000 square feet would be 562,856.
856.
Yeah, we may narrow it to get. I think our young lady got flustered when these notices came in the way they did, in the fashion they came in, two different.
Well,
First
I would have thought this is the essence of your argument, that's something you would have looked at before you presented it to us.
Well,
I mean,
I guess 1150 is our, if
even
we're
with that-
suggesting that 1150.
even with that, we're gonna have to do a lot of arithmetic to get to your number, because everything else has gotta be dealt with, but, okay.
The essence of our argument is the cap rate should be 7.5%.
I understand, and you're looking at.
And $11 market rate.
Okay,
I
well, leave that
apologize
with,
for the mathematical error.
well, you know, you can apologize, but if it affects you, you should be sorry for yourself, not for us.
Oh, I am.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, I have no further questions. So you'll hear from us.
Thank you.
Bathroom break, sorry.
Okay. We're gonna take a break right now. Okay, we'll recommence the hearing, and we'll now deal with 125 King Edward Street. Is that east, I guess? And when you're ready, you can proceed.
Sorry, I have to
Oh.
swear in first.
Sorry?
Please
Oh,
state
sorry.
your full name.
All right.
And you affirm the evidence about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. You can proceed when you're ready.
File number 19-1293. Address 125 King Edward Street East. Roll number 07020098000. Owner, the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation. That this appeal is with respect to the amount of assessed value only. We are valuing the property as a stand of January 1st, 2020, base of the economic condition as April 1st, 2018, based on evidence. In this regard, it is assessor by opinion that the market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $2,966,000, and the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject size in area of 73,924 square feet. Leasable area of subject property 17,794 square feet. On page 2, request about income expense information was requested in April 12, 2018 for 2017 information years and received on April 24, 2018. We don't have a sale history for subject property. We don't have any subject lease. And you can see photo of NPI, Claim Service Center. On my page 3rd, we can see vehicle service garage rent comparables. First line, it's my subject property, built in 1972 with square footage area of 17,694 square feet, with land area around 74,000 square feet. I did present 7 comparables. You can see a map of location is comparables with red dotted subject property. All my comparables was built years very close to subject property, between 73 to 88. Land area between 7,000 to 135,000. Leasable area between 2,000 to 32,000. My mean of lease net rent per square foot came across $18.25 per square foot, and mean $19.22 per square feet. Information and photo of my comparables you can find on start page 18. Shape of lots and buildings. And page 4, we will estimate market income subject property. Building has 15% office space and 15% repair garage. We have 2 premises with overall rent per square foot came across $12.75. We did apply 4% vacancy loss. Came across effective gross income $216,000. We account for expenses 2% and a shortfall for vacant space of $4.50 per square foot. I didn't distribute my. I have more information about 2% of our expenses. Should I distribute my paper package or after?
Is that already filed?
Not yet.
It hasn't been filed yet, so it's,
This is the
It's,
5% presentation.
It's my information to rebuttal.
for your rebuttal.
Oh,
Yes.
that's a percentage, yes.
Okay, well, you can file that, if it's rebuttal, but shouldn't you do so after Mr. Reimer?
Okay.
Yeah.
Overcapitalization rate, we apply 7.05%. Please open page 6. We are looking of office suburban B area, City of Winnipeg, April 1st, 2018, 20th and 80th percentile, between range 6.2 to 7.3. It's inside our range. By applying 7.05% operational capitalization rate to our net operating income of 209,000, we estimate value of subject property 2,966,000. Based of my evidence and analysis, the April 1st, 2020 market value of subject property is 2,966,000.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Weimer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shable, then, looking at page 4, for the valuation that the department's put on it, the way I understand it, then, these parameters, right, from the potential rent through to the cap rate, these are all model-driven parameters,
Yes,
correct?
modern.
Okay, thank you. With respect to the cap rate, then, 7.05%, you referred us this morning to the, excuse me, summary on page 6. Now, you alluded to it, there's no separate capitalization rate information for VSG-related properties, correct?
It's correct.
With respect to the way the city's classified it, the chart you've provided, can you provide this board with the details of how those percentages are calculated?
Yes, I have to. Please, distribution. I will be reading from this document.
Is this evidence in chief now? Because that should have been filed with your, if this is evidence in
Because when I
addition to.
received this documents, I already submitted.
No, if it's rebuttal though, I think that you should.
I will read from this document right now.
Well, you can read
to
from
answer
it, you
his
can read from it,
question.
but don't give, I think that you should file it though when
No,
you.
but I'm gonna
But-
say, this is the evidence in chief.
I have extra page to put in my report.
Mr. Chairman, I object. That should have been part of the evidence in chief, and the city's trying to split their case. It's inappropriate.
The fact of the matter is that,
Okay, I will read.
you know, there is a time limit for everything to be filed. Now, rebuttal is one thing, but if it's more than rebuttal, if it's evidence that should have been.
It's more support for our cop,
Yeah,
right?
but you can't really put more evidence in at this stage, especially if the applicant is objecting to it. If he agreed to let it go in, then that's another matter, but he isn't.
Put it this way, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Shable, the evidence that was filed by the city this morning for this hearing was this chart, the cap rate chart, correct?
Correct. And extra document I bring with me.
I
Mr. Reimer,
object.
as a
It's
rebuttal,
part of
after
my
you've
rebuttal.
presented yours, I'll let her put it in, because it'll be
I-
satisfactory rebuttal at that point.
No, Mr. Chairman?
It's my rebuttal package we present during hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, if there's going to be, I would like to take a look at it then. I completely disagree, I vehemently disagree. If the city's putting in additional evidence related to cap rate, that
It's-
is not rebuttal, that's part of evidence in chief and splitting the
Okay,
case.
Mr. Reimer, before it's presented, you'll absolutely have an opportunity of speaking to it and indicating why you don't think it should be presented.
Yeah.
I won't say it's gonna be accepted automatically. You
Right.
certainly have a right to look at it first, and
Yeah.
I'll let you do that. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
and I will object, present
Well,
objections, objections to you at that time based on
Once you
what
see,
I've
you'll
seen.
base it on what
Yeah,
you see there.
yeah, absolutely.
And I'll let you see it before we do.
Thank you.
Do you want to recess for him to review?
No, we'll wait till it's
Well,
completed.
yeah, sure. Okay,
No, we'll wait till it's completed.
Okay, documents for each.
No, we're gonna wait till it's presented though, and we won't present it till it's rebuttal time.
This is the agenda.
No.
We're not gonna accept it now anyway. Well, we're not gonna present it now anyway, if you wanna hang on to it, but we're not gonna let it be presented until it's time to rebuttal.
Yeah, you can just keep the whole package.
This
Yeah.
is not rebuttal. She has a rebuttal document, and then
Separate.
she has an addenda document.
Okay, and then document, Mr. Reimer is quite right. We can't accept it because it didn't meet the filing deadline. Yeah. Just like we would object to new evidence coming in from Mr. Reimer that we're presenting now.
Okay, so if we go back then to page number 3, Ms. Shable, your rental comparables. We can agree the leasable area, you alluded to this, the leasable area of the subject is 17,694, correct?
Correct.
And lease comparable number 1 then, that's roughly, and I'm going in round terms, that's roughly 1/3 the size of the subject, correct?
It's correct.
And the second comparable number 2 on St. Anne's, that's roughly 1/4 the size,
Yes.
correct?
It's small.
And
And
similarly.
my best comparables very close to
Yeah,
subject
no, I
property,
understand.
number 4,
I understand, 3, 5.
12,000 square feet.
So 3, 5, and 6 are also very, very small, less than 25% of the size of the subject, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then what we're left with, 2405 Pembina, that's the Boyd auto body on Pembina, correct?
Mhm.
And that's the one comparable that would be similar in size, smaller than, but about 2/3 the size of the subject, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The last comparable then, that, my understanding, that's the Vicar Nissan, correct?
Mhm.
Are you familiar, and that's a full, it's not just a vehicle service garage, it's a full car dealership, correct?
Correct.
And with the car dealerships, you're familiar, I assume, with the typical structure of a holding company and operating company in those dealerships, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Then, with respect to going back to page 4, so the expenses, and you alluded to this, I believe, the expense of 2%, that is in fact the only expense item the department's allowing for 2020, correct?
Correct.
And formally, though, we can agree that for the previous assessments, up until including 2019, an additional allowance of 5% in addition to that 2% was applied, correct?
Correct.
And the department made the decision for the first time for 2020 to remove that 5%?
Yes. In dividing our net operating income,
I'm sorry?
assessment and taxation department allowed for non-recoverable expenses in 2 categories.
Can you just answer the questions, please?
General 2% for not recoverable expenses allowance, a shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses associated with vacant space. It's correct.
So it is just now that formerly in previous, with the previous assessments, when the department used the 7%, the intent of that was to recover or to be an allowance for non-recoverable expenses.
I'm sorry, Mr. Reimer, did you say 7%?
Yeah, like the 5 and 2 together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
From our study, all previous management expenses was recovered by owner. And our,
management fees, correct?
yes, we applied 2% non-recoverable and shortfall $4.50 per square foot. And we acknowledge this in our cap rate. So I find that our that our estimate value is very close to market value of
I'd
this
like you to
property.
just answer the questions though, okay? I could be aware
Well,
of this.
but Ms. Shable's just made a statement that I prefer to, now that the statement's been made, I'd prefer to ask a question on that.
And
So-
you're absolutely entitled to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But please try to just answer the questions.
So, Ms. Shable, you suggested just now that the department has accounted for the removal of the 5% in the cap rate?
We just following the reported information, and we use for our mass appraising model 2% non-recoverable and shortfall for a vacant space $4.50 per square foot.
But that's not what you just said. You also just said that the city is adjusted for the 5%, the removal of the 5% in the cap rate. Is that correct, or did I
No,
misunderstand?
it's misunderstanding.
So the city has not, for the record, the city has not adjusted their cap rate to reflect the removal of the 5%? Is that what you're saying?
It's built up in our capitalization rates.
But what does that mean? Are you saying, just, I'll phrase it one way. Are you saying now that the city's capitalization rate was adjusted to reflect the removal of the 5% allowance that had been previously included in the assessment, calculation of the assessments?
No answer.
No answer. Okay. You're aware with the 5% mathematically,
Okay, 1 second. Net operating income has been developed through stabilized owner reported income expenses information. And our capitalization rate can be derived by dividing the property net operating income, but its sale price. We analyze all sales in city of Winnipeg to come across capitalization rate.
so I'll ask you again then. Are
Okay, you
you
can
suggest-
look on
are
my
you suggest-
page 6. We came across that capitalization rate range for suburban office B between 6.2 to 7.3%.
Ms. Shable?
I think
It's
you're-
analysis of
you're-
all
you-
sales.
Excuse me, except for a second, you've already argued that, and I don't think you're really answering the question, I think you're going above that. Try to just answer Mr. Reimer's question.
Ms. Shable, we can agree on this. When you remove the 5% allowance, mathematically, the effect is to increase the net operating income, correct?
It's reflected there.
Is that correct?
It's correct.
So, by removing the 5% then, the net operating income would be increased. And this, you haven't yet answered the question. Are you stating that the city's capitalization rates did account for the increase in the net operating income resulting from the removal of the 5%?
I can answer that our capitalization rates very similar with Colliers, CBRE,
Please
Cashman
answer-
Field.
just answer
So
the que-
it's showed that it's, we did,
You know, you're not really answering Mr. Reimer's question.
You know what, Mr. Chairman, I'll just take it as unresponsive and I'm just gonna leave it at this stage.
our capitalization rates were further reported by review of industrial standard market reports
You're not answering
and
Mr.
external
Excuse me.
property
No,
appraisers.
you know, we've heard this before. You're not answering Mr. Reimer's question. You're reiterating your initial
Mhm.
argument, and you didn't answer Mr. Reimer's question.
Okay.
Okay? If you don't have an answer, that's fine. You don't have it, but don't repeat everything. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, Mr. Manager, any questions of the assessor?
I have no questions.
Mr. Lahirst? So, did I hear you correctly? I want to make sure that
Mhm.
Mr. Reimer asked a question whether the 5% that previously was allowed for management was deducted. I think he asked you because the city has determined that it's recaptured by the landlord because it's a net lease, and so the tenant basically pays for it. Is that the city's position of why it was
Yes,
changed?
because it's reported to us that it's reported by the owner through income expenses
Okay.
information.
Okay, so that was the initial impetus behind the city reviewing the procedure to evaluating these properties. Is that
For
right?
my statement that doesn't matter, it's our estimation, very important market value, what we came across to the end. So if we account expenses, we account our capitalization rate.
For sure, the market
But
value is determined by NOI
It's
times your cap
already
rate.
captured
So the NOI
inside our
goes up.
estimation.
So the NOI goes up, the valuation goes up. And this deduction is now not given. And the question I asked you was that the city, as the basis of them changing that procedure, the impetus behind it, because information the city's received is that those expenses are recaptured by the landlord on a net lease, and the tenant pays
Yeah,
it.
and also our estimate value supported by sale around city for the specific years of sale.
Mr. Reimer, you can
Thanks,
proceed.
Mr. Chairman. So if I could refer the board and Ms. Shable initially to our main evidence, our evidence in chief. So this morning, turning to page 2 of the the first page after the title page, This is the MPI Service Center at 125 King Edward Street East. We agree with the department's land area and leasable area for the property. The assessment for 2020 is currently at $2,966,000. We're requesting $2,353,000. Page 3, there's the site map. It's in a regularly shaped parcel, and it shows the top map shows the location of the building on the site. Turning to standard verbiage, turning to page 7 then. As Ms. Shable had mentioned, the property is owner-occupied, so there's no rental information available. The suggestion we have this morning for this property, pardon me, is that the market rent should be no more than $194,634 based upon a net rent of $11 a square foot applied to that main floor area of $17,694. We have provided this board and Ms. Shable with VSG tenancies, and I'll run through them and then we'll perhaps go through the photos of the tenancies. Number 1 is on Henderson Highway, an area of $11,180 under a June 17th lease at $17 a foot. Number 2, property on Portage Avenue, 5,000 square feet at a net rate of $13.20 a square foot under a March 15th lease. Oak Point Highway, the June 15 lease at $12.30 a square foot for 8,000 square feet. And number 4 is going to be a property that's going to become very familiar to the board this morning. That's another MPI Service Center, 44,000 square feet in that case, part of which was basement. And that under the April 15th renewal was $10.73 a foot. VSG on Sargent Avenue, 4,000 square feet at $9 a foot under a May 14 lease. King Edward Street, 15,031 square feet under a March 18 lease at $9 a foot. Another tenancy on King Edward, 17,909 square feet in that case at $8.15 a square foot in the lease dated July 14. Murray Street, 11,900 feet at $6.50 a foot under a September 16 lease. Portage Avenue, 21,000 foot premise at $5.70 a square foot under a September 17 lease. Oak Point Highway, 7,500 square foot lease at $5.49. And finally, Waverly Street, 27,603 feet under a January 15th lease at $4.82. If I could ask the board and Ms. Shable then to turn that chart, and we can show you the photos of the comparables. If we start at page 28 of our materials. So index, index number 1, the highest index, highest tenancy rate in our materials, that is shown on as index number 1 in the top photo. That's the one that was at $17 a square foot, very well maintained property. Number 2, Portage Avenue, is the $13.20 a foot. As you can see, it's clearly a VSG related tenancy. Turning then to page 29, index number 3. That's one of the properties further in the northwest on Oak Point Highway. That property leased at $12.30 a square foot. Index number 4, that's the Main Street one that I talked about. That's, as you can see, another service center there. That's the one that leased for $10.73 a foot based on 44,000 feet, and again, part of that was in the basement. So I want to be very clear on that. That property's on the docket this morning as well. So then moving on to page 30, we've got the Sargent Avenue premise. That was the one that leased for, it's a multi-tenant property, and that was the one that leased for $9 a foot. Number 6 is King Edward Street East. This is very, very close to the subject. In fact, almost right across the street, and that was leased at $9 a foot under the May 14th. The March 18th lease at 15,031 feet for that property. Index number 7, that's the next comparable on King Edward. That's the one that leased for $8.15 a foot. Index number 8 on Maury Street, that's the one that leased at $6.50 a foot. And again, the one on Maury, clearly I'd suggest the subject is, is superior to that building, and our rental rate reflects that. Then going to page 32, this is our index number 9 on Portage Avenue. That's the one that leased at $5.70 a foot. Bottom, another one out on Oak Point, leased at $5.49 a foot. Would not consider that I would consider that to be inferior to the subject. And then finally, the index on Waverly Street, probably all familiar with that property. That's the one that leased at $4.82 a foot for 27,603 feet. So based upon those lease comparables, going back to our chart on page 7, we're suggesting that for the subject, the $11 per square foot, would be appropriate, and that is the rate will apply. We do not have any contention with the 4% vacancy allowance nor the shortfall rate, and we'll apply those same parameters in our evaluation. Non-recovered expenses, as anticipated, of course, we have a significant issue with the removal of the 5% allowance that was formerly in place, and we'll discuss that further with the detailed materials that we have in our submissions this morning. So for the moment, I'll move on from that. So capitalization rate, and there was some question about capitalization rate, and we presented our study here. Again, a lot of this theory, the board members, I'm sure, are going to be very familiar with, and Ms. Shable would be very familiar with. So clearly, direct capitalization is in the middle of the page here. Direct capitalization is a method used in the income approach to convert a single year's income expectancy into a value indication, and that's what we're using here. Now, we're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, that the capitalization rate in this case should, at a minimum, and this is assuming the 5% allowance is in fact applied, should at a minimum not compress from the previous capitalization rates applied in connection with the 2018 assessment in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases. So on page 10 of our materials, what we note in terms of the environment that we're operating in a new reference date of April of 18, we notice that the Bank of Canada's rate, and this is at the middle of page 10, the rate had actually gone up significantly between April of 16 and 18 from 0.5%, obviously a very low, all the way up to 1.25%, so 75 basis point increase in the Bank of Canada's benchmark rate. The next interesting statistics just under that, 5-year mortgage rates also increased in the period from 2.39% to 2.99% as of April of 18. So again, that's 60 basis points, mirroring to a large extent what was happening with the Bank of Canada's benchmark rate, which certainly stands to reason. So with respect to the cost of money and the environment in which the investors are operating, certainly those costs have gone up, and we believe that that would provide cogent evidence of the premise that capitalization rates had not compressed. Then if we move to page 11, and we provide some summaries there, which the department has as well, of the Collier's and other brokerage studies between, Q1 of 16 and Q1 of 18. And as you can see on the chart there, for the most part, the rates had not compressed at all, so that lends further support to the suggestion that there hasn't been any compression between the two reference dates. Going into then, and I won't read all the verbiage on the bottom of page 11, it's talking about the city's rates, but if one turns to the top of page 12, there's a chart with the different rates applied by the city for, and this is again in the office category, between April 1 of 16, April 1 of 18, and what we applied for 2016, or as of the 2016 reference date. So that's there for the board's reference. The office capitalization rates that we have submitted, and I'll be very blunt, these are not legal service garages. This is, it's a case where we're trying our best to get a sense of investor expectations generally. And as Ms. Shable has suggested, we've categorized this sort of lumped it in with the office group. So our capitalization rates in page 12 reflect buildings that are obviously more office and not so much vehicle service garages, but they do indicate the range there between 6.49% and a high of 8.94%. So based on those admittedly different buildings, but given what the investors, sort of the tolerance and the rate of return that they wanted to get on these kinds of assets, certainly with the VSGs that are on the docket this morning, and in this case, we're suggesting the rate of, I'll make sure it's 7.25, we're suggesting in this case as well within that range. So on page 13 is our conclusions concerning the 20 and 21 assessments. And as I've indicated, sort of 2/3 of the way down, the very last bullet point, suburban office cap rates we're suggesting should be between 6.25 and 7.5. That presumes, of course, a full office building, whereas in our case, we've got a very basically a half and half ratio of office versus what amounts to warehouse space. So you've got a very different animal there, but certainly we suggest that would be a factor that would be, if anything, present a bit of an elevated risk, because that, if you're going to use it and convert it to an entire office, you've got to put a whole lot of money into that garage slash warehouse type space in order to get it there. So given the fact that the given the environment they're operating in and the physical asset we've got, we certainly would suggest that compression in this case is not supported by the market. And in the case of just, again, on page 14, we just conclude by saying we should apply the 7.25% rather than 7.05%, and the 7.25% being consistent with what was applied to the 2018 realty, as well as being consistent with our cap rate evidence that we provided in this study. So then turning to our valuation on page 15, we've applied the $11 a square foot to the entire area of 17,694, using the 4% vacancy allowance and the non-recoverable expenses, including shortfall, as indicated there, and including the 5%, and the 725 cap would come in at a rounded value of $2,353,000. So, just to give the board some sense of the subject, if I could ask the board and Ms. Shable, we can start on page 20 then, to go through some of our attachments. So page 20, I won't dwell on this. This is the valuation that the department's applied to the property, of course, taking out the 5% different cap rate and rental rate. Then moving on to page 22, and we provide this for the board's reference. This is the initial valuation of the subject property using the 7.25% based on the April 1 of 2016 valuation date. And it's that very 7.25% that we're suggesting should be continued based on all the evidence and the environment, economic environment that investors were operating in as of April 1 of 18. Page 23, this gives the board a sense of the garage versus office area, and all of these properties this morning is typically about 50-50 based on the main floor area. There's no lower level in this one as there is with some of the other ones, so it's all just main floor area that is assessed, and that gives you a sense of the building. Then starting at page 24, this is the garage area, and again, it's a very simple layout. It's got sort of one trough in the middle, but there's no hoist, and it's really a glorified warehouse, and you bring the car in there if you've been unfortunate enough to get in an accident, and adjusters look it over there, and then off you go with the other doors as soon as drivable. Page 25 then, this is the office area of the property, a couple of photos there. Page 26, top photo is the office again, bottom photo is the storage area within the office component. And page 27 is the boardroom of the subject. So now, I suggested to the board that I would be discussing the unrecoverable expenses. Now, I know that this study has been, the board is familiar with this study.
Everybody on this board has heard this
Right.
before, so you can probably go to a lesser extent than you have in the past.
Okay,
I
so,
have the same to answer.
Sorry?
Should I submit this?
The rebuttal.
I'll make a few comments maybe, and then Ms. Shable
Well,
will present.
you know what, we'll allow Mr. Reimer to finish with his non-recoverable, then you can present that.
So and again, I'll go through it, Mr. Chairman, sort of at a higher level. On page 1, I'll just go through the key points to draw this through with the board. Page 1, certainly our perspective on this towards the bottom, there's an indented paragraph that comes out of the assessor's 1994 manual, and it talks about quote-unquote management fees, which is a misnomer in our opinion. But what the manual said is it reflects expenses that are incurred by the landlord that are non-recoverable from the tenants, even with net leases. These expenses involve processing payments and chasing bad debts, and as we set forth in our study, the primary non-recoverable expense relates to leasing expenses. So what we say very clearly in our position certainly is this: what this allowance is not. This is not an expense relating to the standard management fees charged by the owner or third-party property manager. And there's no dispute with that those management fees, strictly, when you look just at management fees as an expense item, those typically are recovered from tenants on a net lease. No disputing that point. That's entirely outside of non-recoverable expense allowance, which is what we're talking about. What we're saying this allowance is, and always has been intended to be, is a stabilized expense involving the number of non-recoverable expenses relating to the proper and competent operation of the property. It's those non-recoverable expenses that we are and remain convinced that should form part of the valuation and consistent with the original intent of the allowance. So On pages, and this is, Mr. Chairman, where I will sort of go through a little bit more quickly, pages 2, 3, and 4. We've got the examples from the other provinces talking about the non-recoverable expenses. If you look on page 3 in the middle of the middle of the page, this is from the SAMA, the Saskatchewan Valuation Guide, and they say the operating expenses that are typically not recovered from tenants under the terms of the lease are legal and audit fees. We agree with that. Structural repairs, we agree with that, but we believe that's captured by the 2% allowance that the city has kept in. Advertising and promotion, and then importantly, leasing commissions. So this again, the leasing commissions forms the majority of the costs that we have included in our study, and that's also corroborated by SAM's approach to the thing. So then turning to those are the other provinces, turning to page 5, middle of the page, we do list all of the expenses that we found in our review of the financial information. It ranges from leasing commissions all the way down through mortgage interest. Clearly, there's a bunch of things like mortgage interest, bad debt expense. Mortgage interest shouldn't be included. Bad debt expense is part of the vacancy allowance. Depreciation, not included. That's a valid deduction for income tax purposes, but not included in our valuation. Vacant units, utilities, that's part of the shortfall, so we don't include that as well. So what we are down to, if one turns to page 6 then, in terms of the information that we present in our chart, it relates to these expenses: leasing commissions, professional fees, asset management fees, and advertising and marketing. So those are the expenses that we have taken from the statements, and it's those expenses upon which we present our data on page 7. So page 7 is the chart. It's 32 properties, and all of these statements were reviewed for a 3-year period to try and get a sense of the stabilized allowance. Obviously, they can be all of these expenses can very well be zero in some years, and in some years, in fact, they were, and in some years they're going to be very high, and that's consistent with the nature of the leasing commissions, where if you've got a building with a large vacancy that you have to fill, leasing commissions are, of course, based on the revenue generated by the new lease or the renewal. So the higher the revenue is that for the tenants that's secured, the higher leasing commissions are going to be for that year, and therefore they fluctuate significantly. So there is, as you can see on this chart, a very significant variation from on the properties, and the average. And I'm just going to focus, again, I understand the board members have heard this presentation before, so we have included a second column that shows the effect of the expenses if one assumes the TIs would be included, but to be very clear, we're not including TIs. So when one looks at just the second column from the right, it's that column that we are keying on this morning, and that average percentage is 7.42%, just shown at the bottom of that chart, with a median percentage of 5.75%. So with those percentages in mind, we're suggesting the 5% for the non-recoverable expenses, which has always, in our opinion, been the intent, should remain in place. Now, with the structural allowance, it's as I mentioned, we believe the 2% was intended and would cover the structural allowance for the property and some of these capital items that come into play from time to time, especially as the building gets older. And as you see in the chart, this was not meant to be comprehensive. This was just simply for illustration. As you can see, for some of the properties there, the average and median is much higher than 2%. For a new building, it's going to be much closer to or at 0 for some years, so it just depends on the nature of the asset. But the 2% represents, in our opinion, a fair and balanced, stabilized expense allowance. So based on this, all this information, we're suggesting the 5% should remain in place as a conservative, stabilized, non-recoverable expense allowance, and asking the board to do it, to include it in their valuation. Again, I'm not going to go through the detailed pages, but if the board is interested in pages 10 through 18, this is the details of the expenses, the expense calculations for all 3 years for all the properties, so that the board would have a high degree of comfort as to where the numbers are coming from, and the fact that these numbers are very, very well documented. Next pages after that relates to, again, the replacement reserve for the very, very brief sample that we've taken. And there is some materials out of the Assessor's 94 manual that we refer to, as well as the appraisal manual, and I have that for the board's reference. I don't believe the department will look at the rebuttal, but I don't believe they're disputing it's part of the valid appraisal theory. They're suggesting there's an exception in this province in their assessment world for this, which we're suggesting is not the case. I just want to comment briefly, and Mr. Chairman, you picked up on it exactly, and it was the reason for my question. I'm going to put, if this board is inclined to not allow the 5% non-recoverable as consistent with previous cycles, then our cap rate, because our cap rate study and our cap rate analysis does, we specifically have applied the 5% when we're coming up with our numbers. So if this board is inclined to not include the 5%, I'm asking this board then to take our capitalization rates and increase them by 40 basis points. The 40 basis points comes into play as, and we've run the math on this, when you take the 5% out of the equation, we've included it, but if you take the 5% out of our NOI calculations and our capitalization rate study, based on some of the different parts of the formula, it can vary a little bit, but it's basically between 37 points and 42 points, the effect on the cap rate. So if the board is inclined to not permit the 5%, I'm asking the board to increase our capitalization rate request by 40 points. That is not our primary request. We are asking for the continuation of the 5%, and we'll leave the request for the board's reference based on the evidence in chief. But if this board decides not to include it, then I would ask that consideration be given to increasing the cap rate based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the
Can I
applicant?
submit my rebuttal?
Well, maybe we should ask the questions, then you can do your rebuttal, or do you want to do your, I mean, you're asking questions right now, then you can do your rebuttal, and then Mr. Reimer might have questions on your rebuttal to you. So I want to keep this thing in order so we can do it in a systematic manner.
Mhm. Let's open urgent brief on page 7.
Do you ask questions right now? Okay.
From this table.
Okay.
We can see 11 comparables and effective age of buildings. My question about age. Would you agree that lease rate generally increase over time?
I would agree that new properties will command a higher lease rate. If you have well-maintained properties, Ms. Shable, and that's why I was at pains to show the board and yourself the photos. These are well-maintained properties, but if you have a brand-new building, that is a factor that will go into the lease rate, no dispute.
Many of your lease comparables are leases that were signed more than 3 years before the reference date, correct?
They were signed between there's 2 and 2014, so not many, but there's 2. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in 2015, and 1, 2 in 16, 1 in 17, and 1 in 18.
In our reference date 2018, isn't it?
April 1 of 18, absolutely. I'd suggest lease rates haven't changed much over that period, but yes, that is our reference date.
You have not made any adjustment to account for inflationary effect on leases raised over the time? Have you?
Inflation?
Yes.
Absolutely not. The
Inflation
market,
effects.
it's the market for the space that's there, Ms. Shable. The only people that take into account inflation rates are government tenants where they've got CPI built into their lease. So no, I have not.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions to the assessor?
Yes, I do. On page 2, you indicated you looked at the SAM evaluation guide.
Oh, sorry, Mr. McIntyre, you're on this one now, not this one, right?
Well, I don't know which way I should follow this, Mr. Chairman. I have questions on the original
Can you
brief.
just indicate what you're asking the questions on, and then you
Yeah.
can go in any order you want to, just so Mr. Reimer knows what
Okay,
you're
well, then I'll start back on the submission. Bear with me, I have to put that in. Page 7, you've referenced a number of properties. The one of particular interest in my mind is property number 4, which you indicated was a MPI
Indeed.
service center, whatever they call it.
Yes.
Now, that lease originated in April 1st, 2015. Is there any step-up provisions in that lease?
No, and actually that was a renewal. It started in 10 and then renewed it in 15. And my understanding is that there is no step-ups, but let me make sure. I actually have the source documentation. No, there is no, it's just shown as a 5-year term at this rate. Now, I'm gonna be very clear, and this is important, and it'll become clear as we go through the docket. That lease shows us 44,000 square feet. 44,000 square feet consists of the main floor area. We may as well get this all clear right now. So that the board has, because the board, it's similar evidence that Ms. Shable and I have prepared for all the here matters this morning, so this is gonna come to light shortly. So the main floor area, Mr. Chairman, if members of the panel can write this down beside that lease comp, the main floor area is 29,626, and the basement area is 14,374. So those two areas together come up with the 44,000, and that's where that's where the lease rate comes from for the entire area.
And what is the basement used for?
It is, it's got a lunchroom, it's got some offices, and then some storage and mechanical, so it's a mix. It's actually a high degree of, in basement terms, a relatively high degree of finish.
Okay, that's all I have on the original brief.
Okay.
And back to the rebuttal brief.
Yes.
So, back to page 2. Now, I think you will agree, or you may not agree, that prior to the 2020 roll, the assessment department, and you've got some documentation here that references the 5%.
Indeed, yeah.
In other words, 2018 and earlier, it was 5%. And I'm trying to get a sense of whether the industry is changing. What was the date of this valuation guide from SAMA? I don't think it's in your submission.
That is a very good question. It will have been within the past 5 years. The MPAC one is dated January 16, and this one, I know it was pulled off, and I know that they put a lot of information out from the Alberta guide on this. I don't know the specific announcement or the specific date, Mr. Chairman, but it would have been in the past, within the past 5 years. Very interesting, Mr. McIntyre, and you've actually hit on something that I anticipate I'm going to ask Ms. Shable when you talk about the market changing. It has, and I'm going to be very clear and very blunt on this, it has not. Net leases have been around for the past 30 years.
Well, and I'm not talking about net leases, I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about whether the assessment industry across
Oh, that
Canada
way.
are treating
Yeah.
expenses
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
It's not the net leases.
Yeah, no, so, this SAM evaluation guide and the impact materials we have, I believe are current. I spoke with one of my colleagues, not on the impact side, but on the SAMA side. I spoke with one of my colleagues in Regina, and he confirmed that, they will provide that allowance. But the problem they have in that particular center is they don't have enough data to do things to a very high degree. But certainly the methodology, he said, is what they use. The problem that they run into is the data as to what's or non-recoverable is, I gather the way the reporting goes on with those taxpayers, they don't have a lot to work with. Hence, we're suggesting the data we've provided is very comprehensive, but the practice in SAMA is in fact in place.
Okay. No, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Billy Hirsch, any questions?
I do not.
Okay, I have a couple. So basically, the rationale behind the 5% is that there's non-recoverable expenses that you indicated are things like lease commissions, professional fees, and management fees. Not management fees, right, professional fees, and sorry, advertising.
Exactly, advertising market, exactly right.
And technically though, when a person buys a building that has leases in place and shows a return,
Mhm.
the cap rate is based on the return that is shown, based on the leases that are in place. So I don't see how the management fees can affect the, or,
Not-
I
the non-recoverable,
don't know how these
yeah.
expenses can affect
Well,
the,
see, exactly.
you know why?
Yeah, so here's the thing, and again, this is sort of jumping ahead to some of the questions, but I'm going to read, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to read you something from the appraisal text. This is a good time to do it. And here's a this is fundamental to the approach. In the income approach, which is what we're using here, and recall, of course, what we're getting to is an NOI. At the end of the day, we're getting to an NOI and we're capitalizing it to get to a value. Here's what the appraisal text has to say. In the income approach, an appraiser analyzes a property's capacity to generate future benefits and capitalizes the income into an indication of present value. The principle of anticipation is fundamental to the approach, and that's, we reference that in our materials, that the principle of anticipation is key to the valuation of a property. So, Mr. Chairman, to your question, I've got a multi-tenant property and it's 100% full. You've got various leases, let's say there's 10 units, various leases, some of which are gonna go on for another 5, 8 years, some of which are gonna expire in the next sort of 2 to 3 to 5 years. When I'm an investor sitting on, and this is part of what, Ms. Shagle hasn't presented her brief yet, but this is part of the fundamental disagreement on what the direct capitalization method entails. When I'm standing in time on April 1st, 2018, there's a couple of things that have to happen. I've got to look backwards, and I've got to see how has this property been performing. Absolutely. What's been going on, how has the property been performing? That includes, of course, an analysis of non-recoverables, but also the recoverables. Do I have some gross leases in there where it's eroded? We're assuming no gross leases, it's net, so I'm getting a sense of how the property's done. The key though, this is the key. What are my expectations in the future? If I think this property is gonna run into problems because of economic conditions, physical conditions, or other circumstances inherent in the property, or my income's gonna be eroded, that's what I'm building into the valuation. That's the principle of anticipation.
Okay.
So to your point, Mr. Chairman, and it's a good one, I'm thankful for the opportunity to present this. On April 1st of 2018, I've looked at how it's doing, but my key is this. I know I've got 3 leases coming up 2 years from now, another 4 leases coming up 6 years from now. I also know I can't recover even under triple net leases, not a single dime of the leasing commissions is recoverable. I know I'm going to be paying those leasing commissions. Am I going to deduct that dollar for dollar right off the top? No. But am I going to factor that into account? Am I going to factor my advertising and marketing into account? Am I going to factor my professional fees into account? Yes, because I know, as a very practical consequence going forward, those are ongoing expenses that I'm going to have to incur just to keep my building generating as high an NOI as possible. But the NOI will be eroded by these things.
Okay, answer my question.
That's the key.
Okay, and you don't really have any specific valuation on this property that it's gonna be 5%.
Oh, no, it's based in, you're correct about that. This is an.
Like some of them are as low as 2% on your tables, and some go,
Exactly.
so we don't know. So it's basically a nebulous figure.
But it's a figure that I'm suggesting that's very, very well supported by the data we've provided. But yes, you're right. We can get down to the granular level. In some, as I said, in some years it can be 0. In other years it can be 30%.
And if it's, okay. And the last thing is, so you're basically saying that if we were not gonna grant this to you, you think that you needs another 40 basis points on the cap rate, so you'd be then looking at a 7.65 cap rate, and you say that when taking your cap rate study into effect, you've already discounted the cap rate by 40% because these non-recoverable expenses which you've never been receiving before. So I'm wondering why you have just the cap rate like that.
So on page 12.
Yes?
If you go to those cap rates that are there,
Right.
and this is fundamental, all of those rates are based on the inclusion of the 5% non-recoverable amounts. So, and you'll appreciate this, Mr. Chairman, I think it was a question, I don't know if it was Mr. McIntyre or
Yeah,
yourself.
well, I think my question was based on, Mr. Reimer, I see what you're saying, and you can show me through this, but these have never been recovered before, so I'm wondering why they would reduce the cap rate by 40%,
Well,
not knowing
because-
whether you're gonna get these.
Well, because if you do, so again, to be clear, our numbers here
Yes.
include the 5%. So if we're assuming, okay, don't include the 5%,
Right.
mathematically, all of these rates go up by roughly 40 basis points.
Okay, I don't know if I agree with that, because, as I said, when you did your cap rate, you were getting the 5%.
No, but we included it as a deduction. We included it as the allowance,
That's fine.
right?
Okay.
So if in treat, and again, this is important, because if you're treating an assessment and appraisal, you've got to use the same methodology. So if the methodology that the board is now gonna use is take this 5% allowance out, okay, but then to be fair, it doesn't make, if you don't take the 5% allowance here on our cap rates,
Right.
now you've got apples and oranges. Now you've got two separate kinds of valuations, and it isn't consistent, so it has to be consistent. You either have to take them both out,
Okay.
in which case our rates go up by 40 points, or you keep them both in, which is what we're suggesting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can now present your rebuttal. And if you have anything else to, other than the rebuttal itself, Mr. Reimer's got to see it before, and we'll determine whether it's appropriate or not.
Is it all removable?
Do you have two rebuttal documents?
Yeah, it has three documents.
That's mine?
No,
There's
there's
two.
two different.
Oh, you got two of them.
There's one general package and
Yeah, I
then one
got two.
specific.
Sorry. Okay, can somebody else do? Of this one, you only have one,
Only have one?
and you only have one?
I only one of each.
Yeah.
I think, is there two here? Oh, maybe there are. Sir, can you turn your phone back to 7?
Yeah.
It keeps on buzzing or beeping and your processing the text.
Okay, so I'll start off by saying I have no objection to the thicker rebuttal package.
Right.
This is what I, okay?
Okay, and if you look at the thinner
Right.
one, and let us know what you think of that.
Oh, this is not what I thought it was. Yeah, this is proper rebuttal, I have no objection to this.
Okay.
I'll have some commentary on it, certainly.
And fair enough, you can ask questions on that problem. Okay, you can go receive the rebuttal.
And first,
You want to use the thinner one first, okay? Go ahead. Yep.
And we need to open page 2, page 7 on page entries. On agent bridge, page 7, we can see potential marking rent, lease comparable table. Index 5, Sergeant. Lease start date is shown as May 1st, 2014. The correct date is May 3rd, 2003. Index 6, King Edward Street. Lease start date in shows as March 1st, 2019. The correct start date is March 1st, 1991. The start date correction above are shown on the attachment income expenses questionnaire. On page 4, first line, unit 100 for Sargent Avenue, is leasable area 4,000, lease start May 3rd, 2003. On page 6, for our Sargent, first line, King Edward Street, it's units 120 and lease from March 1st, 1991. Next.
Okay, I can indicate that we've all, this next rebuttal, I'm certainly gonna let you go ahead with it, but we've all seen it before, so you can,
You see before, yeah?
we've all seen it before.
Okay,
Because I'm not telling you not to refer to it, just like Mr. Reimer, but you might not have to go into as much detail as.
yeah. We have capitalization rate evidence specific for office property.
Mr. Chairman, can we
Yes.
have a sidebar?
Yes, we can.
Should we leave?
No.
No, we'll leave.
We'll leave.
Okay, well, the cameras are on. I'm sure that you interrupted, but we had something we had to discuss, support for this whole hearing. So, accept our apologies though for interrupting you in your rebuttal, or your, I mean, your rebuttal, and please proceed.
So we will see 20th report of revision document, 2 pages to support capitalization rate and non-recoverable expenses sampling. On capitalization rates, we have a lot of questions about it.
No,
No, we don't
we
have
don't
that.
have that.
You have this?
You're not referring to the rebuttal package?
No, you
The
have
smaller one.
extra small document.
The smaller one?
Yeah.
No, the smaller one was referencing those two properties with the lease changes.
Yes, we haven't gotten that.
We only have these two.
That's the addenda document that you did not accept.
Okay,
You don't, you accept it.
if that's additional information, not rebuttal, we can't accept it. Mr. Reimer is actually,
You accept it.
no, he said that it's not acceptable because evidence has to be in, and it wasn't filed in the time limit.
Yeah, I'm accepting the
This-
Ms.
yeah.
Shagan's rebuttal concerning the
There's a
lease.
third thing, that
Yeah, no, the third thing, I'm not,
Not accept.
that's additional evidence, it's not rebuttal, so
Okay.
filing, it's too late to file.
Let's go another package.
Yes, the other one.
That's the big one. Okay.
Based on flawed assumption, Altus Group incorrectly alleges that the historic 5% management expenses allowances was a stabilized expense involving a number typical non-recoverable expenses relating to the property, incompetent operation of the property. This statement is incorrect, erroneous, unfounded. The historic 5% management expenses was an expense relating to the standard management fees charged by the owner or property manager relating to day-to-day operation of the property. Further, Altus Group agrees that standard management fees, which made up the historic 5% in previous reassessment cycles, are usually recovered in whole and or
Okay,
in part
excuse me for a
from
second.
tenants unless the tenants are on gross or semi-gross leases. In my case, I will read only 1 page, and after we decide. It's highlights about all rebuttals.
Yeah, okay, I'm just saying that Mr. Reimer acknowledged that these are recoverable expenses, the 5% management fee. So I don't think there's a dispute there.
To develop a 2020 general assessment model, Assessment Taxation Department analyzed income and expense information where management was recovered to derived model generate net operating income, net of management expenses. Therefore, the model generate net operating income developed through a simple interest valuation are already net of management expenses. ATD has also allowed for non-recoverable expenses. Non-recoverable expenses include a general 2% expense allowance, shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses during times of vacancy, 2% general expenses
Are you gonna just
allowance.
read, excuse me, are you gonna
Yes,
just?
I will read just highlights,
Okay, because you just read the
because
whole
it's
thing.
very
and
important.
And we've been through this before,
Mhm.
all of us, so we know what it says. If you can just highlight the important things
Yeah.
instead of just reading it all to us, because that's gonna take a long time.
All my
and
first
You're gonna
page.
lose us.
It just highlights my whole text only.
Okay.
and after we'll decide what we do. The 2% general expenses allowance was always intended to include expenses incurred by the landlord that are not recovered by tenants. Those expenses could include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. Previously, jargon or at the Board of Revision may have referred to the 2% general expenses allowance as structure repair allowance. The jargon was overly simplified. The rebuttal package justified the following.
Excuse me, we can read this as fast as you can. If you're gonna read it all to us, we're gonna be here all day, and we've been through this before, we know what it says. Can't you just hit the high points of where the city's position is and why it's there? Instead of,
What I'm
I
doing
mean,
right
if you want
now,
us to, we could all read this.
I repeat myself again. I will read only first page. They highlight whole briefs.
Okay, go ahead.
The 1995 General Assessment Manual should be given no evidence of consideration. The historic 5% management expenses was in fact an expense relating to the standard management fees charged by the owner. The expense Altus Group determined as non-recoverable are contrary to assessment case law in Manitoba and are not to be treated as expenses. The expenses Altus Group determined as non-recoverable are usually important when using a discount cash flow method of analysis. Asset management fee are non-allowance operating expensing items. Altus Group analysis of percentage EMI does not exist in appraisal theory. In float, the use of median rather than average change, the result of Altus Group analysis in conclusion from 5.75 to 4.78%. After analyzing the effect gross income for several indicate in the Altus Group study, ATD has determined that range of non-recoverable expenses net of vacancy shortfall is between 0.36% and 3.82% of effective gross income with media of 1.12%. ATD methodology is consistent with Saskatchewan, in Ontario and PAF jurisdictions.
Thank you. Anything else you want to go over? I know there's case law in this brief. Is there any case law you want us to refer to?
I can keep reading the document if you wish. Because after our rebuttal 565, we go on step by step.
Right. Okay. This is all before us, but there's nothing that you want to point out that you think is important to your case today, other than reading the...
For my case importance that our model, derived model generated net operating income as net of management expenses. Therefore, the model generate net operating developed through a free, simple interest valuation, already net of management expenses to prove our 2%.
I'm trying to help you.
shortfall.
You've got an addendum, and it has a number of cases in it that we support the city's position. Are you not going to highlight them to us?
You can do it.
Okay, well, that's fine. You don't have to.
Relevant fact. Non-recoverable expenses, we on page number 4.
Yeah, we know what all this says, we've been through it before. I just thought that maybe you might want to refer to some of the cases that you've provided us
Okay,
with.
on
to support
page
this.
number 3, management adjustment.
Again, that's part of the, you basically stopped and I asked you, and I'm sorry I did at this point because I was going to give you an opportunity to try to drive home the important precedents that you gave us and maybe draw our attention to what you think supports the city's position in them. You know, reading over the fine print is good, but I think the cases are more important, and we've all been through this before, but that's fine. If you're not in a position to do that, that's fine. I don't want you to read fine printing anymore. We've been through this before. Any questions, Mr. Levin?
Based on what was presented in the board's level of knowledge, I'll have more to say in summation. How about that?
It's fine. You have to ask questions. I'll certainly give you an opportunity of summation.
Yeah, you know, perhaps one thing, or a couple of things. Ms. Shable, when terms now, and this is strictly focusing on the rebuttal package, like the big one, initially. Can we please go to page 5 at the bottom? And the statements made by the department, and I appreciate the department's forthright approach. We do not dispute that these items, referring to the non-recoverables, are considered non-recoverable expenses in appraisal theory and literature as indicated in our study. So that, from an appraisal perspective, the department then is not taking issue with the non-recoverables being part of appraisal theory, correct?
I think the brief speaks for itself, Mr. Reimer. I don't know if,
I just
you know,
wanted to make
I
sure
don't know
that.
if, I don't know if she's capable of
Okay,
answering.
if Ms. Shable, if you don't answer, it is in print. Your point is well taken. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, on that document. Should I immediately, on the smaller document, I have,
Any question you have, and please present it, you can ask them now, certainly.
you know, the only question in Ms. Shable's documents, I have no concern as to the authenticity, but my question, Ms. Shable, was, had you had a chance, and if you didn't, just, that's okay, but had you had a chance to go back for these comparables to some previous INEs, income and expense questionnaires that were replied to, go as far back perhaps as 2013, 2014, or did you only go back to 17 and 16?
17 only. Because it's information we use for generate
Yep.
model
Yep, understood, understood.
for 2020.
And there's, Mr. Chairman, the reason for that question will become clear very shortly, so those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
I can't keep it, thanks. Okay.
Some,
Summation?
and actually, can I respond just not to the big, to the little one, the rental rates?
Absolutely.
Ms. Shable's, and it's interesting, Ms. Shable was looking at precisely the same information that I was with respect to these tenancies. And the two tenancies she refers to, first one on Sargent and the second one on King Edward Street. And the reason I asked Ms. Shable about how far back, how much time she had to go back, and her answer is, you know, well received, that she didn't go back further, but the reason that I did was because I'm very familiar with some of these accounting systems. And what happens when renewals are entered onto these systems, I actually worked with one very, very closely for a couple of years when I first started in this industry. It's a property management accounting system. What happens is, you enter the initial lease, and you've got, let's say, a 5-year term, so you've got it from 2016 until 2021. And in a lot of these systems, when the tenant renews, what actually happens is, and the way these reports kick out from the accounting systems, the renewal shows just as a new end date, in this case of 2026, but the start date is still shown as the original date, despite the fact that that original lease term was only 5 years, and a renewal date should have been shown, but the fact is that these property management software systems often don't. I have that from.
And that's their comment, but you know, I don't think that we need.
Well, except, but
Matters very-
here's my point. When I went back to the previous years,
Yes.
I do have documentation that I've only got one copy, but I can show the board in Ms. Shable that shows precisely this. The end date for the King Edward lease is shown very clearly on in this case, I think it's the 2016 rent roll, as the lease end date is 2018, and then on the next document that Ms. Shable probably refers to, it's a new end date of 2023, and that's the 5-year renewal.
Right.
It was the exact same thing with the Sargent Avenue, so
I'm sure.
I'll leave it at that, but as far as it goes, Ms. Shable's information that she's presented is exactly what I was looking at. I took the time though, because of what I knew about these properties and tenancies, to go back and check because our systems that we have showed the renewal dates, and I went back to check, and I saw this very same thing that Ms. Shables presented, and our database had a different start date. I went back and tried to check this point in both cases,
And I
right?
don't think it makes a difference when we started, if it had a 5-year renewal basis.
Mhm.
The new lease that's in place now, which is
And-
renewed, is a new lease basically.
And that's precisely my point, is the lease start dates in my
And
chart,
that's fair.
yes, were appropriate.
Okay?
And that's my questions, thank you.
May I have my point too? We have renewal, original lease, renewal, and step up. For a sergeant, no, King Edward, it's rent step up.
Right.
So original, 1991.
Thank you. Now,
Thank you, Mr.
now we've finished with this one, you'll get our decision on it. I need a,
Should we do one summation for one and then just have it?
oh, you know what? Okay, this is the deal. I've got to get to my car in about 5 minutes because I've been running out of time. We do summation, I think that I should be okay.
How about you go to your car first and
Well,
then?
please, how long do you think it'll be, Ms. Weber?
No, well, not long.
Okay,
You're
there's 2 questions I want to ask you, actually.
Okay.
Okay, how long you'd be now, and how long do you think the other of your
Well,
matters are going to take?
I can tell you, Ms. Shadle and I both have similar evidence for the remaining properties, and obviously the number covered is exactly the same,
Right.
so I would expect them to certainly proceed much more quickly.
You'll obviously not sure quickly, but I guess I'm going to need a couple of hours of time.
Well, or,
I'm good.
sure, I
Yeah.
mean, that would be plenty.
Okay. That's fair, thanks. Okay, go ahead and do your rebuttal now.
Summation, Ms. Shadle, did you want to do?
Your
something?
submission, I'm sorry.
Agent had provide no evidence for lease rates, just is stable. My rent in base of market comparables. Based on my evidence analysis, the April 1st, 2018 market value of subject property is 966,000.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Again, on the rental rate, the chart we presented, I'm going to suggest is evidence that was researched very thoroughly, and in fact, in terms of that Main Street property, which is going to be the one we made this morning, the IME is going to be submitted, and that's, as Mr. McIntyre identified, the one of most interest. With respect to the non-recoverable, we continue to think 5% should be allowed, and if the board chooses not to, please do bear in mind that our capitalization rate study that we presented in here needs to be lifted by 40 points because the methodology we used was exactly the same. Keep including the 5%, and we then take the 5% in our capital analysis. It's either got to be both, or you've got to make account for it on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, I guess. Okay, well, let's proceed with the much heralded 1284 Main Street.
File number 19-1292, address 121284 Main Street, roll number 14042025000. This appeal with respect to assessed value only. We are valuing the properties as stands of January 1st, 2020, based of economic condition as April 1st, 2018. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $7,357,000, and the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. Subject property has a land area of around 150,000. Leasable gross area 44,000. The subject property is located at 1284 Main Street, at the corner of Main Street and Church Avenue. On my page, page 10, we can see location of this property of city map. 1284 Main Street located and west northwest portion of city of Winnipeg. We can see our plan, airports. We request information about income expenses mailer for 2017 in April 12, 2018, and we receive information in May 2, 2018. Please open page 8 and 9. It was income expense mailer questionnaire returned to us on May 3rd, 2018. It's information for 2017, December 31st, 2017. And we can see lease posted for us. Lease start April 1st, 2015 and end March 31st, 2020. Leasable area showed on page number 8. Total leasable area of 24,225 square feet. And monthly rent around $40,000. Building has around 50% office space and 50% service garage. It's occupied by a Climb Service Center. The main floor consists from office space and garage, and basements consist from storage, for storage space, lunch room, filing storage, and some offices. On page 3, I have presented vehicle service garage comparables with a map of all my comparables with red dots for subject property. First line in my table shows that subject property, first line, was estimate of 44,000 square feet at estimated rent $14.41 per square feet. This building built in 2010. I acknowledge all my comparables, old building built between 1973 to 1988, but it's for data available for us and reported to us. Square footage of land area between 7,000 to 135,000. It's my number 7. It's similar, most similar to subject property in case of land area. All my lease start date in 2017, because our reference date April 1st, 2018. Leasable area, I admit it's very small leasable area, from 2,000 to 32,000 square feet. My lease 7 comparables. I would like to repeat myself, it's most similar to the subject property, with lease per $22.90 per square foot. All my comparables, mean came across $18.25 per square foot, and median $19.22 per square foot. On page 4, we have 4 premises. It's somehow divided for first for office, for garage, and 2 premises for basement space. Basement space has some office interior and storage, so we divided, and mechanical room. Potential rent of this property for 44,000 square feet by using $14.41 came across as 634,000. Vacancy laws for this specific property was applied 4%. We have the effective gross income 608,000. We also allocate not recoverable expenses that can include a general 2% expense allowance, that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc., in shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. It's $4.50 per square foot. Net operating income for this property summarized by 589,000. For this property, we apply 8% overall capitalization rate. To support our capitalization rate, please turn on page 6. City of Winnipeg divide all property type for office for downtown and suburban area A and B. Our property going to suburban B office space with range between 6.2 and 7.3%. By applying 8% of capitalization rate for net integration income divided by net income, we came across estimate value of 7,357,000 estimate value of this property. Based on my evidence and analysis, the April 2018 market value of properties, reference day April 1st, 2018, market value of subject property is 7,357,000 square feet. I would like to only for the back. I never mentioned about all my comparables what are presented on page 16. Pembina, $16.04 per square foot. St. Anne Road, $19.80 per square foot. Portridge Avenue has two different leases in place, started in 2017 for $19.22 and $20.54. On Pembina, we have lease started in July 17 for $13.75. You can see here photo of property. On Pembina, 2017 lease for $16.44 per square foot, and Regent Avenue, $22.19. It's a building built in 1988. It's much older than our subject property built in 2010, but close and similar is in land area and leasable area. On page 12 through page 15, you can see a floor map of this building. We have a site plan, main floor area furniture. On page 14, we can see basement floor finish area. And page 15, main floor finish plan for office parts of building. So based on my evidence, the 2020 assessed value of the property is $7,357,000.
Mr. Reimer, any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shable, could we go to page 4, please, briefly? So again, as was the case with the previous matter, this is all model-driven, these are all model-driven valuation parameters, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Could we turn then, now the department's model-driven rent is $634,055, correct?
Mhm.
So if we could then turn to page 8, of your materials. Pages 8 and 9. So we can agree then, though, that under the 2015 renewal, 5-year renewal, the actual rent being achieved for the entire building is only $472,117, correct? That's on the rent income shown on page 8.
Yeah, it's rent income plus property tax recoverable.
Right,
So
right.
total
And-
income,
yeah.
300, around 340,000. It's, yeah,
No,
it's very
actually,
close to our estimating
I think,
potential
I think the
income.
rental income is 472,000, not 340,000.
Yeah, but you forget about property tax. Oh, yeah.
No, but that's recovered, you see. If you go to line 121, it's revenue, but then if you go to line 216, it's an expense, so that's an offset. It's zero, that nets out to zero. So the net rental income, the true, just to be clear, Ms. Shable, from my perspective, if you disagree, okay. But I suggest to you, we can agree that the net rental income as shown on line 108 is $472,117 for the subject.
Yes.
Okay, so, and that's under the April 2015 renewal. So then if we, pardon me, if we could turn to page 30 of your materials, please. So the 44,000 square feet, that's comprised of both the main floor and the basement, correct?
Mhm.
And so the market rent that the model has kicked out for the entire area, including the basement, is $14.41 a square foot?
Yes.
Okay, your comparables 1 through 7, none of those include basement space, correct?
No.
Of any kind? And comparables, and you've alluded to this, and I appreciate again you being very forthright with it, but your comparables 2, 3, 5, and 6 are less than 10% of the size of the subject, correct?
Yes, it's less.
And it's significantly
And
less.
they also less and land area.
Well, okay, but.
And if you adjust-
So let's talk about that, because you've raised the land area. But I believe, Ms. Shable, that's a little misleading, if you're bringing this up. So in the case of 340 Pembina, there, I think that's appropriate to refer to the land area. That's a single occupant building, correct? I believe it is. That's the Cal Tire on Pembina. And I'm looking at your page
Mhm.
816. Okay, so that land to building ratio, so the reason I'm suggesting, Ms. Shable, you've got to be very careful with this. Because economies of scale apply not just to the building, but to the land associated with it. So in any kind of retail or industrial purpose, if you've got a land to building ratio that's less than sort of 3.5 to 1, you're very likely going to run into a problem. Now, in the case of our subject, it's not a problem, it's 3.87. So that's okay, but when you talk about land areas, then it's your comp. So with comparable number 1, that land to building ratio is roughly 3 to 1, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so for 226 St. Anne's then, and I was just, so that's the Midas shop. Are they the only tenant on that site? Or is there's 2 buildings on that site, I guess, eh?
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't know what the second building is, but I'm gonna suggest to you that's probably comparable land to building ratio as the subject at roughly 3.5 to 1, once you factor in the second building.
We don't know that the second building's in the same title, it could be a different.
Well, actually, I'm looking at page 17.
Yeah, I am too.
And so that's outlined, whatever the titles are, that's outlined the assets on this.
Oh, you're looking at the map?
Exactly.
I was thinking
the
the
top.
photograph.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the top of the 2 buildings there.
Okay.
So I guess my point, and I won't belabor this, Mr. Chairman,
That's
my
fine.
point, Ms. Shable, is I'm gonna suggest to you that it's the land to building ratio that is key, and if you've truly got a very, very high single tenant land to building ratio, that generally would have the effect of raising the rental rate, because now very often what's being built into it is compound space, but that I'm suggesting to you isn't the case with your comparables. Index number 7, I alluded to this earlier, that's the Victor Nissan dealership, correct?
Mhm.
And again, you're familiar with the holding company, operating company structures of That's typical with these auto dealers?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's car dealership, it has 50/50 office space and repair garage. Same as
No, I,
subject property.
Yeah, I
It's
don't-
very similar.
I don't doubt that you believe it's similar, and I guess the concerns I would have is that relating to Hope Co-op, it's not an arm's length lease. Now, with respect, so the model in this case, again, Mr. Chairman, can I consider all the questions around the unrecovered expense and the 5% allowance, can I consider?
Absolutely,
Ask and answer?
you not belabor it.
Okay, ask and answer.
Right.
So the cap rate in this case that the model has kicked out is 8%, correct?
Mhm.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions of the assessor?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. If you go to page 4, the cap rate that's submitted was 8%. But if you go to the page 6, the range seems to be 6.2 to 7.3.
Yes. And also, when you see low and high, our cap rate between 5.55% and 9.05%.
But it's
So
up.
it's still inside. But also our capitalization rate depend from location. And sale and teaser location drive our capitalization rate for similar property.
Okay, that's fine.
No questions.
Okay, I have two questions. The first question is that they did supply a mill, the landlord supplied a miller that
Yes.
showed an NOI that was different from the city's.
Yes.
And why would they use a model rent when they had the actual figures?
Because we analyze not just subject property, we analyze all property for city of Winnipeg, and through statistical analysis remove all outliers and came across what range.
I understand
We
that.
every time estimate in range.
I understand, but we have an arm's length lease here, right?
Mhm.
And so fairly, wouldn't a purchaser be looking at how the building performs rather than what other properties in the city might perform at when agreeing to buy that property?
Yes, but please open page 8. How our questionnaire divided. First column, annual income received. It include actual rent income and all recoverables. Second column, all annual expenses specific for properties. We don't ask about business inside building, just maintenance property.
Right.
And column 3, we ask about leasable area. So if we see difference in leasable area in our record and triggered us to inspect property,
Okay.
so it's our communication between us and owner.
Okay. You did not.
And also I would like to mention on column first, total income for all this property, total income, 340,000. Open my page 4.
Ms. Shagel,
I'm not sure
you
I didn't get 340 from.
I don't know what you're
Look
referring
on
to.
bottom line, total income for this property, because we account for rent income specific and all recoverables, it's income for this property.
Ms. Shable?
No, I think that, I don't think that's fair. If the taxes are paid by the landlord, I mean, the taxes are recovered by the landlord, it can come off the NOI. It's an expense that's deductible.
To estimate NOI, we use total income
Yeah, well, I don't think that
and
that's
all
correct.
expenses.
Okay, well, anyway, this question is,
Difference between its net operating income.
and I see an 8% cap rate was used here, whereas in the previous property, the city used a 7.5, is that all
Yes,
because of
because
location?
it's,
All
yes,
because
it's
of
more
location.
driven by
North end.
location and all sales in this area.
Okay, okay, that's fair. No other questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We're not disagreeing with the cap rate of 8%. Just briefly, and Mr. Chairman, you picked up on it, I can say with certainty what we're calculating here is net rental income and net operating income, not including gross income including recoveries. But in this case, so if I could ask the board, page 3, this shows the aerial map and it shows the location of the building on this site, just for the board's reference. This is, and incidentally, so this morning we've got a total of 5 MPI service centers. This one has a floor plate. There's specific designs. This one, Lexington and Barnes that are coming up have exactly the same floor plate. So just so you know that there's gonna be a high degree of similarity
Okay.
among these three. Page 7, then, these are precisely, I won't go through it again, these are precisely the same lease comparables that we presented in the first hearing. The difference here, though, and recall that the previous appeal was based on an older building, but only 17,500 feet, and it's all on the main floor. What we've got here, as I had alluded to, is a very different animal. It's a newer building, but there is very, very significant, a very significant amount of basement space. And so what we've added to our, on page 7, we've got those main floor VSG rents, and what we've added on page 8, if you turn that over, that's the basement. There's not many basement rents for finished, put it this way, most of the time basement space is just a throw-in for storage. There's very little or nominal finish, there's some mechanical area, and the rest of it, the landlord's not expecting to generate any revenue. So it becomes very difficult to actually find basement rents for space that isn't just storage. But these are the rents that we did find for those types of tenancies, which are actually used for office or even in one case retail purposes, and the range was between $3 a foot and $7 a foot for this basement space. So in this case, the basement area is 14,374 feet. So what we're calculating, as indicated in the middle of page 8, is a potential income based on $17 for just the main floor space, $8.50 for the basement space, because as I alluded to, there is a significant component that's lunchroom space. There's some office finish along with storage and mechanical. So we believe we're being very, very fair with this rent, and we come in at $625, $821. In this case, if then we go to page 10, as you can see on our valuation, the suggestion we've got is actually to reduce this value, including the 5% non-recoverable, to reduce the value to $6,885,162 based on the information set forth there. And as I indicated, per the questions of Ms. Shable, this is the property that's in fact leased in its entirety for a net rent of $472,116. So certainly, part of what we looked at was, the capitalization rate in this case, and I do agree with the suggestion Ms. Shable had that that'll likely be a function of location, because what we'll see in the other the service centers with a similar floor plate but in different areas, I believe the cap rate's significantly lower. So I'm putting that down to a function of location. So we believe on balance we're being very, very fair, especially in the context of that 2015 renewal, which was, and to be clear, what the owner reported was just the main floor area, because as I say, a lot of times, and this is the case here, the owner just calculates it based on main floor area, and the basement is included. When you actually take the total rent and you divide it over the total area, including the basement space, so then you've got effectively a blended rate, that then translates to the rate, if one turns to page 7, and this is, Mr. McIntyre picked up on this, this is our, on all our charts, index number 4 on Main Street, that's this property. So the blended rate, taking that 472,000 divided by the 44,000 feet, is $10.73 a foot as the blended rate for both upper and basement space. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
No.
No questions.
No, thank you. That takes us then to 930 St. Mary's Road.
And Mr. Chairman, just for the sake of brevity, if it helps, we are not disputing the evaluation of the Dairy Queen, so Ms. Shable, she wants to present okay, but it's not necessary.
Because the value is this cap rate. Is that the argument?
Well, there's a Dairy Queen on the site, like there's two.
Oh, I see.
And we're not disputing the DQ at all,
Okay,
so.
so it's just the other property. Yeah, okay. You received them already, Sheila?
File number 19-1294. Address 930 St. Mary Road. Roll number 08002940000. Owner is the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation. The bill is with respect to the amount of assessed value of MPI claim service center only. We are valuing the property as standard of stands on January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition as April 1st, 2018. Based on the evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $3,287,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The property is MPA Claim Service Center is located on southeast portion of the city of Winnipeg. You can see it on my page, all air photos. On page 12. You can see map on the city of Winnipeg website, air photo of parcel, and actual photo on 2000 on page 14. And a regular shape of land area is 70,548 square feet. A leasable area of 18,534 square feet. This building built. Dairy Queen was built in 1964, but MPS Climb Service Center built in between 1972 with addition 1985. We received all requested information for 2017 information years. We requested in April 12, 2018 and received in April 24, 2018. Please open page. It's posted on page 10 and 11. We can see rent income, it's only for Dairy Queen, and we don't have rent income for MPI Center because it's owner-occupied property. On my page 3, I presented rent comparables about Dairy Queen, we will not distribute. Go to page number 4. It's a vehicle service garage rent comparables. First line, it's subject property, built in 1972. We use rent per square foot $13.02. I presented 7 comparables. You can see location of my comparables on the map below. It's page 4. All my comparables built same age, between 73 to 1987. Lease area between 7,000 to 135,000. All my lease start in 2017. It's what I use information years 2017 to come. Reference date April 1st, 2018. Yes, all my property is small area. It's included Pembina Highway for 12,000 square feet, close to subject property. Rent for $13.75. It's the most similar to my property, the best comparables and most similar to my subject property. Mean for all 7 comparables came across $18.25, and the media is $19.22. On page 6, you have our estimated value parameters. Potential rent for 17,694 square feet by applying $13.02 per square foot, estimate by 213,000 roughly. We applied vacancy loss to 4%. Our expenses include non-recoverable expenses of 2% that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. And a shortfall for vacant space for $4.50. Our net operation income estimate to 214,000. Our capitalization rates for this property is 7.05%. Please open page 8. This capitalization rate, we're looking on City of Winnipeg 20th and 80th percentile, between 6.2% and 7.3%. Inside this range for suburban office area. So our estimate value of 3 million 29,000 specific for vehicle service garage. If you add estimate market of fast food restaurant, 258,000 came across 3 million. 287,000. Please open page 16. This building built in 1973, but it's done some renovation, exterior and interior renovation. It's supported by my premises. Permits details posted here. We have interior alteration. We have 2 times different interior alteration by 15,000, 16,000, 60,000. We have on page 18 and 19 more permits details that show that this property very well maintained. On page 20 through page 30, all my comparables, air photo map of whole property and specific photo of my comparables. It's mixed together with fast food restaurant and fast food restaurant start from page 20 to 24. Specific for vehicle service garage and comparables, we can see photo on page 25. On Pembina, irregular triangle shape of building property, rent for $16.04. Very similar building 1977. On page 26, we can see St. Anne Road. Net rent less $19.80 per square foot. On page 27, we have two buildings and 2 different leases, but signed in 2017 for $19.22 and $20.34. On page 28, on Pembina, irregular shape of property, and they have lease in 2017 for $13.75 per square foot. On Pembina, we have lease also signed in 2017 for $16.44. And last page, it's regionally New West, signed for $22.90 in 2017. Based of the evidence in this report, the assessor opinion the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $3,287,000. Is that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Louder, any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And again, I've been through this a few times now, so I'm not going to belabor a whole lot of things.
No, I can agree that the rebuttal evidence was read in the first instance, and your presentation on recoverable costs,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll take that evidence to all our cases.
Okay, so page 6, Ms. Shable, again, this is a model-driven assessment right from top to bottom, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, turning to page 4, very briefly, and you alluded to it again in a very forthright manner. You're agreeing then that comparable number 4 is probably the best comparable, correct? Based on the size, and I recall that from your testimony on this one.
Yes.
And that's, of course, the other ones are significantly smaller other than the 7th one, correct?
Yes.
And comparable number 4 is though still only about 2/3 the size of the subject? A little more maybe, but it's around the 65%.
Yeah, but more is than that. Yeah.
So 65% of the subject.
Yeah.
And
Best
again,
number.
Regent is the Vicar Nissan, correct? The complete car dealership, okay. Now, you've referred the board on pages 16 through 19.
It's Boyd Auto Body.
Yes, but Pamela, that larger one is Boyd, yes. It was the very last one, that's the Vicar Nissan, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So pages 16 through 19, Ms. Shable, the department's provided evidence of permits taken out. These were permits taken out over the past 18 years.
Yeah,
correct?
it's my permits showed that property available maintenance, my point.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think she said that she's showing the property is well maintained.
Oh, and I would
Yeah,
agree.
because it's old property.
Sure,
We
I
need
would
to
agree it's.
See condition of property.
I would agree, I mean, I've been through it, it shows its age, Ms. Shable, but it's been maintained. I guess I'm just wondering what a $32,000 permit from June 26th of 2000, I didn't see that it would have a high degree of probative value, but that's fine. I have no issue whatsoever with the department's evaluation of the DQ. Questions on the non-recoverable asked and answered, so I believe I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Any questions to the assessor?
I have no questions.
No question.
And I don't either. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start cutting to the chase very, very quickly. So this is a similar floor plate to the very first one, which is King Edward, similar vintage, smaller, there's no basement, smaller area, 17,000, in this case 18,500. So, again, I'm going to go at a higher level. Mr. Chairman, if the board members and Ms. Shable could turn to page 7. This again, same rental comparables as provided in the previous hearings. We're suggesting in this case, based on this particular asset, a rate of $11 per square foot. And again, that's all main floor space. We're suggesting the inclusion of the 5% non-recoverable. And then the other area where we are in disagreement relates to cap rate. So if I could ask the board, and I won't go through the study itself again, we've been through that, but if I could ask the board to turn to page 14. So for page 14, we state that we note the cap rate applied as the subject was 7.25% in connection with the 18 assessment. The new 20 assessment, as Ms. Shable's indicated, is based on a low rate of 7.05, but for the reasons set forth in our study, we're suggesting the cap rate should remain at 7.25%. So then if we turn to page 15, we've got the area, and sorry, the area for just the MPI, I believe is 17,000, yeah, it's 17,694, so we're agreed on the area. We applied $11 a foot, running it through, as shown there was a vacancy of 4% and non-recoverables and shortfall, and 725, we come in at a value of 2,353,000 rounded, add in 258,000 for the Dairy Queen, which isn't disputed. We come in at a total value for the property of 2,611,000. I'll just very briefly refer the board on the cap rate issue. If you turn to page 22, this is just to corroborate our suggestion that the previous assessment was based on 7.25. This is the original 2018 assessment department's valuation. The right-hand column, the VSG, is the MPI service station showing the 7.25 cap. Then again, if we move to page 23, we've got some photos for the board to show the property. This is probably going to look quite familiar. This is similar to the previous appeals. We've got the shop area, pages 23 and 24. Page 25 is the office area, areas there. Page 26, again, the office areas. And page 27 is some further pictures in the office area. Page 28 is the floor plan, so you can see there the floor plan for the property itself. Pages 29 and 30 have the INE, but it only, as Ms. Shable correctly pointed out, the only rent in place relates to the DQ, and that's not an issue. It was a very low rent, and it's not an issue anyway. So with that, I would be open to questions. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Werner?
You would agree that lease rate generally increase over time?
No. Lease rates have a wide variety of factors. If the market is tight, lease rates are going to go up because landlords can charge more. If the market is not, if it's call it a buyer's market or a tenant's market, then the rates will actually either stay flat or reduce. And if it's a very, very soft market, the rates will decline in a pronounced way. So time is not in and of itself a relevant factor.
You have not made any adjustment to account for inflationary effects
CPI?
on lease rate over the time, have you?
I have actually taken into account the lease indicators, and that's how I've arrived at my suggested rate of $11. As I mentioned earlier, the only time the CPI or that kind of notion comes into play with lease rates is when you've got a government lease that provides for escalations based on CPI, and that I have seen, but that's not a relevant consideration here.
No questions? No, I have questions.
Okay, Mr. Andrew,
No
questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. McIntyre had asked earlier with respect to the non-recoverable at the first hearing about the SAMA guide, and I've got an email from my colleague stating it's a January 15th guide, which is the current guide for the SAMA. So just on that question, that's the answer to that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So now we're going to the item 6 on our agenda. For the Lexington Park.
Yes, same.
Sorry?
Yes.
You can proceed when you're ready.
MPI service plan center.
You can say.
File number 19-1295, address 14 Lexington Park. Roll number 0407141400. Owner, the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation. This appeal in respect to the amount of the assessed value only. We are valuing the property as stands of January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2018. Based on evidence in this report, It is assessor opinion. The market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is 9,707,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. This subject property MPM Climate Service Center is located on northeast portion of city of Winnipeg. Please open page 10. It's a red dot location of this property, northeast. You can see shape of land area, irregular shape. Land area 273,000 roughly. You can see photo of this property on page 11, 12. The property, leasable area of the property, 44,000 square feet. With land to land area 9.22 to 1. We received all requested information through 2017 for income expenses mailer on April 24, 2018. Information what we received posted on page 8 and 9. It's owner occupied property, so we have only annual expenses for this property posted here. Subject sale history. This property was sold in 2009 for 1,650,000. We don't have any lease in place because it's owner occupied property. On page 3, I present some comparables, 7 comparables with first line for subject property, and map, all my comparables on Google Map with red dot for subject property, 40 Lexington Park. I have 7 comparables, much older than the subject property that was built in 2010, with much smaller land area and leasable area. My best comparables will be comparables number 7, with leasable area roughly 32,000 square feet, rent for $22.19. The media of comparables $18.25 per square foot, and media of all compares $19.22. All my comparables are photo and photos of buildings presented on page 21. We have Pembina on 20, Centen on 21 for $19.80. 2 leases in place for Portage on page 22. On page 23, we have lease on Pembina, old building 1976 for $13.75. We have on Pembina on 24 for $16.44. And last, my comparables on Regional Avenue West for $22.19. Our subject property has main floor area 50-50 for office space and repair service garage roughly, and full basement area of 14,000 square feet. So my first, that's why we have 4 different premises. First premise for first and second for office for main area, office and garage, and last two premises for basement area, because we have some office space in interior renovation and some filing cabinet and mechanical room. For this property, 44,000 square feet was applied model drive net operating rent for $15.20 per square foot, with potential rent $668,000. For this property, we apply 4% vacancy loss. Reduce expenses, the expenses will use expenses 2% expenses allowance, and also shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses due to time of vacancy, $4.50 per square foot. Our net operating income is $621,000. For this property, it's built in 2010, we apply 6.4% of overcapitalization rate to support and show our capitalization rate on page 6. It's 20 and 80 percentile for April 1st, 2019. It's inside range 6.2%, 7.3%. By dividing net operation income by capitalization rate, estimate value of subject property $9,707,000. Based on is evident in this report, is assessor opinion the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2019 is $9,707,000. And the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shable, on page 4, then, the entire valuation again, including the 6.4 cap and the model rent, or the rent, that's all model rent, correct?
Yes, it's correct.
And so if we turn back to page 3 for a moment, it's very similar questions. So in this case, as we did, this is precisely the same floor plate as 1284 Main Street, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the basement area.
Mhm.
None of your comps have any basement space, correct? As I recall? Okay.
No.
And again, the 1424 Regent, that's the Vicker Nissan auto dealership with the whole co-opco situation, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a very big difference between $22 and we appraise only $15 per square foot.
Yes, but
Its adjustment was made.
Ms. Shable, you haven't adjusted for basement space. I would have far less concerns if the department had adjusted for the basement, but in any event, that's not what they've done. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Curious questions asked and answered, I'm good.
Okay,
No questions?
no questions?
No
No
question?
questions, okay, good, you're fine.
Mr. Chairman, can I cut to the chase now? Because now we are dealing with exactly the same floor plate as 1284 Main for the second one on the right.
Right.
Could we please move to page 7? The comparables there, both in the middle of the page, that's the comparables we're suggesting for the main floor, which includes, of course, index number 4, which is the Main Street property heard earlier this morning. That does have a basement component, and the blended rate for the entire building, 44,000 feet, as this building is $10.73 a foot. Then we'll go, and we would attach, of course, the additional comps and the base, at the bottom, pardon me, of page 7, the basement rents that we were able to find for finished space. So if one turns to page 8 again, what we're suggesting is the main floor area have a rate, market rate of $17 a square foot. The basement area have a rate of $8.50 a foot, which is higher, of course, than any of our basement comparables, but reflects the good quality of that space. Then if I could please ask the board, Ms. Shable, to turn to page 15. So there's our valuation. It includes those rates I just referred to, $17 on main, $8.50 on basement, 4% vacancy, non-recoverables as set forth, and the other issue is the cap rate. The department, if you recall, for the 2020 assessment applied a CAMA-driven cap rate of 6.4%. However, the rent, or the cap rate that was applied for 2018 was 6.75%, and for the reasons I've talked about, the trust are also being carried forward with the cap rate. We're suggesting there should be no compression given the actual data and the economic climate in which an investor is operating as of April of 2018. So with no compression, we're suggesting a cap rate of 6.75%. Again, just so the board is familiar with some of the things I referred to, page 22, that is the 2018 assessment that shows the 6.75%. Page 23 and 24 shows the floor layout for both the main and basement areas. And then for the board's reference, I won't go through them now because time is moving on here, but pages 25 through 27 are the photos of the subject and then the photos of the comps as we've gone through earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
About comparables, you have not made any adjustment to account for inflationary effect on lease rate over time, have you?
As stated earlier, Ms. Shable, I have not because it's not relevant in my opinion.
Okay.
Questions, Ms. McIntyre?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions?
Thank you.
Just give me a minute, report. Okay, thank you. We proceed now, the last one, yeah, which is 15 Barton Street. You can proceed when you're ready, Ms. Shable.
File number 19-1297, address 15 Barnard Street, roll number 030914476600, owner the Manitoba Public Corporation. The appeal is with respect to the amount of assessed value only. We are valuing the property as a standard of January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition as April 1st, 2018. Based on the evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $9,707,000 and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject property is MPI Claim Service Center is located on east-west portion of the city of Winnipeg. Please open page 10. You can see map of city of Winnipeg. Also, this part of city for triangle land area of 160,998 square foot with gross floor area and usable area of 44,000 square foot. It's has basement of 40,500 square foot and main floor 50-50 compared from office space and service garage of 29,626 feet. We received income expenses information from the owner in April 24, 2019 for our information years 2017. Information we received posted on page 8 and 9. It is owner occupied building, and what available for us, it's maintenance, annual expenses to maintain this building, not business, a specific building. We have old sale for this property in 2008 for $2,050,000. It's a land sale. Property was built in 2010. On page 3, we have vehicle service related rent comparable. This first line for subject property that has land around 160,000 and visible area 44,000. We use net rent for overall $15.20. 7 my comparables, very old compared to subject property, and has less leasable area and less land area. My best comparables for subject property, most comparables, it's subject index 7 on Region Avenue that has 136,000 land area, but built in 1988, old, has lease in 2007, place for around 33,000 square feet for $22.90. It's a car dealership, but it has same 50-50 office space and repair garage, because office space and showroom is same interior. All my comparables, photos presented on page 19. On Pembina, triangle shape of property, rent for, in 2017 for $16.04. On page 20, we have St. Anne Road, old building, 1997, rent for $19.80 per square foot. On Portridge Avenue, we have two buildings, separate buildings with two separate rates. One rate for lease rate $90.22 per square foot, another $20.54 per square foot. On page 22, we have Pembina, irregular shape of property with rent built very old, 1976, and rent for $13.75 per square foot in 2017. On Pembina, triangle shape of parking lot or parcel built in the old 1973, our subject property 2010. It's rent for $16.44. And on page 24, we have Region Avenue West, irregular shape of land and built in 1988, the most comparable to subject property, same 50-50 office space and repair office space and showroom and service repair garage for $22.19. On page 4, we have same split 4 premises. First 2 premises for main floor, third and fourth premise for basement to divide office space, interior decoration, and mechanical room and storage area. Our potential rent for 42 leasable area, 42,000 square feet leasable area, by applying $15.20 per square foot. Our potential rent is $669,000. We applied, we account for vacancy loss to 4%, and we account for expenses, 2% of expenses allowance for advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. And also shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses during time of vacancy or $4.50 per square foot. Our net operation income, $621,000. Our our overall capitalization rate for for subject property, 6.4%. That's supported on page 6. It's middle of it's close to the okay. It's in range between 6.2% and 7.3% for suburban office building, and it's inside 80 percentiles. By our estimate value of subject property by applying overall capitalization rate of 6.4%, $9,707,000. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $9,707,000. In the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Weimer?
Mr. Chairman, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shable, on page 4, it's all model driven, top to bottom, including cap rate, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I assume that the board recalls the questions I had on the rental rates relating to no basement and the vicar and the car dealership?
You can.
Because this is exactly the same information, precisely the same floor.
This is
a
exactly the same,
this-
but we
This
just-
is a rerun of the other two. so
Exactly it is.
Then questions
I
asked
noticed
and-
that already, and so
questions-
we're also gonna do the same thing we did in those two,
Questions asked and answered then.
and I've already done it. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that's everything then? You'll be hearing from us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I spoke with Lisa before, so I think I'm.
You did.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah, we're gonna go at 1 o'clock, you know, I estimated 1.